We are gathering on the unceded traditional territory of the Comox First Nation, and we are grateful for their care and stewardship of these lands since time immemorial. Can I have a motion to approve the agenda, please? Thank you. Second. All in favor? Oh, sorry, I forgot to mention Councillor Kettler is not well, so she's joining us by Zoom, but you can't see her, but she's actually here, so virtually. She's here virtually. Yeah, okay, and minutes, adoption of minutes?
So moved.
Thank you, second. Thank you, Councillor Baranki, all in favor? Thank you. And delegations, safe cycling initiatives in the Comox Valley. Comox Valley Cycling, come on up. You are welcome to sit or stand, whichever you're more comfortable with. Just speak into a mic that's on, yeah.
Sounds like it's on. It's a small enough room anyways.
It is.
People at home, though.
Yeah, the people at home need to.
Okay.
We're YouTubing. We're YouTube stars.
Is this okay?
Yeah.
Perfect. I'll stop hitting buttons while you are. There we go. Well, Mayor and Council, thank you for having us tonight. You can sit back and put your feet up. We're not asking for anything major or special at this point. Just wanted to give you a quick update on what we're doing. We've got some very interesting projects on the go, some of which obviously involve Cumberland, and we're happy for that. We currently have about 130 members. We've been up 250 to 300 in the past with COVID, because we didn't do any in-person arm twisting. We're kind of down on members, but we still have over 800 followers on Facebook, 300 on our email distribution list. Throw in Instagram, we've probably got about 1,000 people in the valley who are interested in what we do. We're a member group of the bigger BC Cycling Coalition. BC Cycling Coalition does a lot of lobbying at the Ministry of Transport level. They were one of the key people in the most recent safe passing laws that are supposed to come through the legislature, those types of things. Our board, by the way, we have, I've lost control here, Rachel. We have 9 members on the board, 2 of which are from Cumberland, I'm happy to say. There we go. We try and focus, as with most volunteer organizations, we have a very finite volunteer base, so we focus on our priorities, and that's education to try and get people more cycling safer, as well as the one at the bottom, infrastructure and policy advocacy, are the 2 main ones. But you've probably also seen us around at special events and networking. We have a set of portable collapsible bike racks that we brought up for the bike and gear swap up here a couple of weeks ago. Snow to Surf was just on. We use them there, Yana, Philburg Festival. We want to facilitate free parking for bicycles whenever people need it. So we're happy to help out whenever we can. And you'll notice at the bottom of the infrastructure, we're going to talk about this, we have cycling maps for the Comox Valley that basically are set to comfort level to help people navigate, that we're updating this year. One of the big things we do, and one of the most rewarding, is the kids education program. We're up here in Cumberland last fall. We do every school, we have a partnership with School District 71. Every elementary school, all 14 in the valley, we visit 7 per year, and we do all the grade 4 and 5 kids. So in theory, every kid in the valley has the opportunity to go through our 2-day program, which you see the picture on the left. We take them through, on day 1, some cycling skills, where they learn to handle their bike better. And then on the second day, you can see in the right-hand picture, we run them through how to work a 2-way, 4-way stop, straight line riding, shoulder checking, all those necessary things to get around town. Then we take them for a little road ride around the neighborhood, around their school, which we provide about 1,000 hours per year of volunteers for this program, which is a massive undertaking on our part. And through the years, we've accumulated a trailer with, I think we've got about 14 kids' bikes and an assortment of helmets and Visi vests. If kids don't have a bike or helmet, they can still participate in the program. Pylons, all the goodies. We also have an education program for adults, which we're really trying to grow. It's called Ride Right, and it's a 2 to 4 hour course. Usually a 4-hour course is the full one, where you come and you do about an hour and a half of learning the rules of the road, and the remainder of it is a little bit of parking lot skills, riding, and then we take you out on a road and we actually take people across the 17th Street Bridge and the 5th Street Bridge and roundabouts, etc., to show them that, give them the confidence level that they can ride on the roads in the valley. It's cheaper to, if you can take someone and give them the skills and the confidence to ride on the road, than to build something for them, if they're in that subset. One of the things we're doing this year, one of the projects, is our Ride Right program has been identified as something that the BC Cycling Coalition and Cycling BC want to take provincially and to other jurisdictions. So we've got a grant to document it. They're going to make some videos. We had 14 instructors trained at a local course here in April, so we've grown from 4 instructors to 14 now. It's a wonderful program. We've just got to convince more people that they should take it. It's only $30. Some of the amazing things we've done is the Campbell River Substance Intervention Team has nurses and outreach staff, 14 of them, that we trained all of them, because they're going to be using e-bikes now to go do wellness checks within the community. E-bikes are a great resource for somebody like that needs to zip around town quickly, maybe even get down a trail to a remote location where somebody is. So bylaw people, those types of things, it's wonderful, and we're happy to help train those. We're working with the Immigrant Welcome Center and also with North Island College and their international students to help develop programs for them as well. The mapping project I spoke of, if you've seen our little folding map or been online, the picture on the right shows it, and the roads are coded in, this is from 2016, in red, orange, or green, depending on comfort level. And you can see from 2016, there wasn't much green, a lot of red and orange. Some of the green is, we have some city urban maps as well for within Courtenay and Comox, that there's a little more green involved in there. We're redoing that. One of the big benefits of that is we're going to update right back to what's called OpenStreetMaps, which is the mapping tool and base that pretty much everything but Google uses. Apple Maps uses it, Trailforks uses it. So we're going to try and make sure all the bike infrastructure in the valley is on there, and then we're going to help people identify where they should or should not or may not want to ride in the valley. So we've got a grant to work on that as well. This is a typical pie of people's cycling comfort levels. And this is true for many, many jurisdictions and cities that they've done the survey. It comes out pretty close. There's about 10% of people who ride a bike and are enthusiastic, confident. They'll ride, not anywhere, but most anywhere. There's about 30% who just aren't interested in riding. And the target group we chase is the 60% in between, to either educate them or advocate for better infrastructure so they can move in and be an enthusiastic and confident rider as well. The survey that was done in Cumberland last year was very, very interesting, because you guys are bike riders. Remember
Really?
the 10%? You're 54%. Now, a few things roll into that. It's obviously it's a cycling community. It's a bike culture in Cumberland. So you're gonna have some good riders up here and people who are confident. I think also with 381 responses, that's 10% roughly of the adult population here who responded. It was an active transportation survey, so you probably got a lot of people who are interested in active transportation. So it may not speak to the wider population as much, but certainly you've got a lot of people who bike and want to bike and love to bike. So what's also interesting out of it is if we look deeper on the left-hand side where it says when I cycle it is 2, the bottom 2 were to go anywhere outside of Cumberland. And on the right-hand side it's a fairly complex plot, but it shows how far would people ride to go to work or school. Well, there's a good number. Half of them are willing to ride some distance between 5 and 20 minutes to get to work or school. So it's, again, a very, very active community. So they asked people on the left side, if you drive, what do you do? Where are you driving to? And the vast majority, you see the ones with the red arrows say, I'm going outside of Cumberland. I'm going outside for shops or restaurants. I'm going outside to commute for work. And the bottom one is for school. Down at the bottom, I'm driving for school. So outside is a big driver for getting in a car. I think you all know that. You all live here. The main reason that they're not cycling is due to lack of safe routes. Every one of those red ones is either a traffic or a safety issue. Connectivity is the number one challenge. So people have said, what do you see as the main challenge? Connectivity to destinations, and unsafe cycling facilities basically was number 3. And you look at that, of 381 answers, connectivity at 150. So you've got 40% of the people who are saying, I want connectivity. And they want more and safer cycling routes. Again, the right-hand question shows that in spades. So how do you get out of town? Well, the big connection we see asked for time and time again is a good connection to Courtenay. And it's complex. If you see here that Courtenay's on the top in red, Cumberland's on the bottom in blue. And in between, if you're riding up Cumberland Road, you go from City of Courtenay jurisdiction into green, which is CVRD/Amody Road, back to blue, which is Cumberland, back to green, which is CVRD, back to blue, which is Cumberland, but it's on the parkway, so it's controlled by Mody. And then you hit the light blue, which is the portion of bike trail in Cumberland. So it's complex. It involves multiple jurisdictions, and we see this a lot in the valley. It's not new to it's not unique to this situation. See the same thing in Courtenay, Comox, lots of things. Ultimately, this should be a physically protected bike lane all the way if we can get it. There are some interim things you can do, but which involve likely bike lanes on Cumberland Road and then a multi-use pathway along the parkway. Positive news, in talking with CVRD recently, they did a 2021 active transportation network plan, which they identified about 24 projects totaling over $80 million at that time. So I imagine inflation has kicked that up. And some of them that they're prioritizing right now, they're trying to sort through and say, let's pick a few and get going on them. They're really pushing for regional connectivity. So the 2 green spots on this map are very high on their radar. Nothing concrete yet, but they're interested in a bike shoulder on the portion between Courtenay and where it hits Cumberland. So that's something we'd really like to work with you, CVRD and Courtenay, and get everybody in the same room, decide what can be done, what should be done, and how to do it. Speed limits. This is another issue that if you're going to get people to use the parkway and not have a separated and protected bike lane, the portion that goes under the underpass, the Island Highway, is 60 kilometers an hour, and the red portion from the visitor center down is 80. So wherever you don't have a separated bikeway, it's going to have to come down. And the big thing with cycling is relative speeds. So if you can ride at 20 to 30 kilometers an hour, as indicated in the bottom corner, somebody going 60 is going 2 to 3 times as fast as you, which can be quite unnerving and scary for a lot of people. 80 brings that to 3 to 4 times. 50 is still twice as fast as you, which is unnerving enough as it is. And of course, the severity of any accident is the square of the speed. So moving from 50 to 80 almost triples, instead of just not even doubling the speed, almost triples the impact. So if that's something that's within your control, I don't know if you can extend that 50 kilometer hour speed limit down to the information center. The other things within Cumberland, we were up a couple of years ago, talked to you about this, that it's kind of sad to see this bike lane end. It's a great bike lane. It really needs that last 750 meters to keep people comfortable. Not only does the bike lane end, the shoulder ends. The pavement is horrendous from there on in. So it's not an optimal situation, and hopefully that's high on your list as well. One of the things we want to do is how can we help? And the way we've helped in the past with some of these things is, I know they're significant money for any jurisdiction here, and they go to grant requests. We're happy to provide letters of support, and that usually in an active transportation grant situation gets seen with pretty good light, I think. Happy to have a joint meeting with yourselves and anyone else to coordinate the efforts on the Parkway or any connector. I know there's other ideas. In fact, we threw out the small road idea and talked to Bevan the last time we were up here. And if you can encourage anybody to do the adult safe cycling, that'd be great. The last thing, I know I'm taking too much time, is it's a challenge. You have to juggle about 5 balls when you're looking at active transportation. And it's everything from the maintenance of your existing network, making sure it's swept, snow removal, painting, once the paint wears off, repairing any potholes. Then you have to look at adding the cheap stuff that you can do with the paint on the sidewalk, on the lanes. That helps. Those are lower cost. 3 and 4 are both tough, because one is detailed design work on a major project. If you've identified what you want to do, get ahead of the game, spend the money on the design, on the engineering, so that it's quote unquote shovel ready, as the government likes to see for grants. And if you have areas where you're not sure what you want to do, get a study going. And the last one, of course, is set up some bike parking and end of trip facilities. Thank you very much, and appreciate you having us up here. Happy to answer any questions if you wish.
Thank you so much for being here. Council, questions?
I haven't been out to, thank you for your presentation, by the way. I haven't been out to the small road one. It almost looks like there is an existing trail in there. Is that true? Or like between?
Yeah, I think it's an unofficial
a renegade
trail.
Okay.
It is according to what I can see on the CVRD IMAP they have, it is it's not private land. There is a right-of-way through there.
Yeah.
That's what I understand. And I believe it sits within the jurisdiction of Cumberland.
Yeah. Anybody else?
I just wanted to say thanks for your presentation. A lot of those stats I didn't know, and recently there's been a bunch of groundswell about a connection. This council seems pretty keen on that possibility, so hopefully the next couple of years we'll
Great.
coming up to some
Yeah.
stuff.
Things are going to grow, so
Hopefully, yeah.
no, can't start soon enough.
I
Yeah.
would definitely think about biking to Courtney a lot more if the Parkway wasn't like that, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. I'm looking forward to talking more and, as you said, getting more of the groups together and
Perfect.
trying to move this forward.
Thank you.
Yeah, so we have both a transportation master plan in process, which
Yes.
you are welcome to participate in. There's outreach happening coming up this spring and summer. And the connection to Courtney is also one of our strategic priorities. So we're with you on that and appreciate your support. And yeah, let's get more people out there on bikes. Thank you for all you do.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for being here. And a motion to receive that
So moved.
delegation, please. Thank you. And then there's unfinished business, North Island Students Union Menstrual Equity. There's a recommendation there from, oh, sorry.
We didn't vote.
Oh, sorry. All in favor?
Yeah.
Got that. Yeah, that council directs staff to bring forward a provision of free menstrual products in the village public washrooms in 2024 operating budget.
So moved.
Thank you. And a seconder? Thank you.
Second. Oh.
All in favor? Thank you. Reports. Okay, environmental protection, wildfire, urban interface development permit and development variance permit, Coal Valley Estates Phase 1011. We didn't, sorry, we need to move that recommendation too. I'm missing all the stops today.
I'll move that council direct staff to bring forward the provision of free menstrual products in village public washrooms in the 2024 operational budget.
Second.
All in favor? Thank you. Milena and Courtney.
All right.
Okay.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Tonight we have the Coal Valley Estates Phase 10 and 11 development permit back before you, as well as a development variance permit and several other items for approval. In response to comments from Council regarding the initial development permit application in 2020 and the fan house modification request in 2021, Staff has worked with the applicant to provide comprehensive information, resulting in significant changes since council last saw the application. The proposed blasting has been limited to roads and services instead of entire lots. Lots will remain with their current grading and vegetation cover, allowing new owners to design the sites to minimize disturbance, consistent with the development permit area guidelines. Also submitted in response to council concern is a new stormwater management plan that no longer relies on the wetland for storage, and a traffic calming plan to address concerns around traffic speeds on the Penrith extension. The purpose of this report is to request a referral to the Advisory Planning Commission. Approvals requested from council related to Coal Valley Estates Phase 10-11 subdivision are the Environmental Protection Development Permit, the Wildfire Urban Interface Development Permit, Development Variance Permit to allow for an alternate road design to narrow the road west of proposed lots 10 through 18, a frontage waiver for multifamily lot 23, an amendment to the Fan House Covenant area, approval for the following related to the CDA, so the reconstruction and resurfacing of Penrith from the property line of the land to Egremont instead of Maryport Avenue, and Egremont Road reconstruction and resurfacing only from Penrith Avenue to Dunsmuir Avenue, and acceptance of lots ML23 and ML27 proposed to be transferred to the village. The northern section of the property is highly disturbed with no potential habitat for listed species or plant communities. The southern portion of the property is forested in predominantly young regenerating forests. There is relatively more mature vegetation within the riparian greenway, which provides most of the habitat values on the property, and most of the identified potential species would utilize this portion of the property. There will be no development within the riparian greenway, thus protecting any values that would occur there. The riparian greenway is already a village-owned property or park, which was first dedicated during the Phase 1 subdivision. The application meets all requirements of Development Permit 1, Environmental Protection, and Development Permit 4, Urban Wildfire Interface. There is substantially more information in the report, and we are here to answer any of your questions. Thank you.
Substantially more. Thank you for all that information, and thank you for bringing this application along so much further than it has been in the past. You answered a lot of the questions that we've had in the past, so that is much appreciated. I know it's been a lot of work. Council questions? Go ahead, Councillor Sullivan. Sorry.
Mayor Brown just indicating that Councillor Kettler does have questions.
Okay.
I should go around the table.
Do you want to start, and then we'll
Sure.
go to Jesse?
Just a couple. Thank you for this report. As the mayor says, this has come a long way in the last several years. Just a couple questions as far as the species at risk report. I read that it was in 2019. Just curious as to like a statute of limitations on a report like that, because 4 years seems like a lot of different wildlife could move in and make their homes there. So just curious about that.
Yeah, so there's no hard, fast rule. Generally, we look at about 5 years and take each one on a case-by-case basis. In this case, I mean, developments can take years to complete, so within 5 years is usually reasonable. Also, there were some amendments to the original report that are attached as well.
And yeah, I just wanted to say about the blasting, I really appreciate what staff has done in regards to the blasting and those changes. Thanks. That's it for now.
Councillor Kettler, go ahead.
Thank you, and sorry I'm not there in person. So I was just wondering to staff if we should be referring it to APC, if there are a lot of changes that we still want to see. And one of the major ones that I'm thinking about is the buffer around the Ravine Park. The lower portion of it only has a 10-meter buffer. And I really think that this is not sufficient, especially considering the blue listed species that we've found in there. In particular, the screech owl and the screech owl nesting boxes that we have in there. So the screech owl was identified in there in 2014. They haven't been able to locate it with the callback system that they use in the most recent survey. But I feel like we should be restoring habitat rather than saying, oh, well, they're not there, so now we just need the bare minimum. If you look at the Develop with Care around screech owls, they're talking about much, much bigger buffers, up to 100-meter buffers. And in particular around the nesting boxes, a 3.5 length, which equates to the 45 meters that's talked about in the report. It's suggested in the report that we move the current nesting boxes so that we don't have to increase the buffer size, which really I think is counterproductive to enhancement and bringing back the at-risk species. So I would like staff to sort of address how we could go back to the developer to increase this buffer zone.
Thanks, Councillor. Elena, do you want to try that, or Courtney?
Courtney, go ahead. I'm not sure exactly.
Maybe the first part of the question about the timing of the APC referral, I could respond to that. Maybe that's something that council can keep in mind when you get to the recommendation section. I think it would be ideal to have only one referral to the APC if possible. So depending on what you come up with at the end of this, that could be a consideration to hold off on an APC referral if you think it might lead to kind of subsequent iterations. For the second part about the buffer area, yes, we can certainly look at a larger buffer area, which could be addressed through a covenant on the private property, or other development measures. So it could be addressed through covenant on the property with this subdivision. And another way of addressing it, and I'm not recommending one above the other at this point, is through the subsequent development permit that will be required before construction. And so this is on the commercial lot 27 and multi-lot 25. So with the changes that the developers made to the application, where any clearing or any required blasting on those lots was being deferred until there are specific development plans for those lots. That means that another development permit will be required once they have building plans. So that's another possibility, is to address additional buffer area at that stage.
Okay, and just to clarify, so we would refer this, say it gets approved, then as those lots in that row get developed, it would come back for each one would come back for a separate DP, or the whole lot,
Each legal property would be required to complete a new development permit, environmental development permit.
Right.
Which would include a biologist's report.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Councillor Kettler, did you have a follow-up?
Yeah, just in regard to doing it later per lot, that we've seen covenant on some of the slopes around the development already, where we've had difficulty monitoring that because people have been clearing those slopes when they weren't supposed to be clearing those slopes, and trying to monitor that on a per lot basis doesn't seem like a good use of our resources. And if we could set the boundary of the park in the beginning before any other development permits go through, I think that would be a much clearer and more effective way of putting through this process.
Okay, that makes sense. But, okay, I'll let you guys respond, and then
I think that's great clarification that Councillor Kettler, that was the intent, that the park boundary be extended. So
Okay.
thank you.
Okay. But we could have, because one of the concerns I have is because they're individual lots, and so we're leaving the existing grade, and then allowing the lots to be sold. The new person comes in and they want a flat lawn, and they put 25 blocks together to build up their flat lawn, or however they manage to do it. How are we managing that? And do we need to? Can we do that through the DP?
Well, as part of subdivision, and Courtney, correct me if I am wrong, but we have requested a covenant for no lock block retaining walls in the next phase of Coal Valley. And then any blasting required would be part of the development permit for that lot, which would come to council.
Okay.
So there is definitely the opportunity to look at it on a case-by-case basis. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay, who's next?
Go ahead, Neil.
You got a list there.
Got a long
Yeah,
list.
I hate saying I echo Councillor Kettler's, but I do feel there needs to be a bit of a bigger buffer area between the edge of the ravine there and the cliff. It doesn't take into account some of the wind throw that happens when you do large scale clearing like this, and so after a while you're going to see that buffer zone definitely thinned out, and again, doing this all in one shot instead of applying covenants to individual parcels, I think is a much better way to go for us. That kind of covers it. It allows, and from an aesthetic standpoint, in the bottom of that ravine, it'd be nice to have the view that you're still under a canopy rather than just building right up to it, or if people are quite if they decide to go higher and level out their property. So that's about my comments on it.
Thank you. Councillor Therrien?
Yeah, I've got 8 or 9 things here.
Okay.
So, more of a technical nature for most of these. Why is the road only the one you're asking for the variance on? Why is it only 7 meters instead of 8?
So just so that we don't have to do more blasting along that lane, I believe. And also because it would just be to service like the 5 or 8 lots, I think it's 10 through 18. It's just essentially like a small collector road.
So that road wouldn't be used then as access for the large multi-family lot that's right next to it?
No, that would be off the other road. Sorry, I don't have the map.
So all of that would have to come off of the little
So that,
cul-de-sac at the end of Kendall
so
for the whole multi-family lot?
yeah, so there would be access off of Road C, which is the end of Kendall. That would be for the multifamily. And then, like I said, the access for the narrow road would just be for lots 10 through 18 there. And just to give some sort of clarification, it would be the same width as like Penrith and Maryport. That road portion is approximately 7 meters as well. Just, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that leads me to believe that that's quite steep and rocky terrain through there then. So how suitable is lot 24, the ML 24 lot, for a multifamily development? And if you do make a big multifamily development there, are you going to be able to get cars into it off of, if they're all coming in off the end of the road down there?
I mean, the design details for road are completed at the design stage at subdivision. But multi-lot 24 does have a flat open spot. I believe Road C is cleared at that end already, and there is sort of like a large flat area up top. It wouldn't necessarily develop the entire property, not on the slope below. But
Okay. And this will all tie in here together eventually, I think. So the gifting of the 2 lots, lot ML23 and ML27, they're basically being gifted because they are not suitable for development, right? There's streams on them and one's at the bottom of a cliff.
I wouldn't say that necessarily. ML27 is developable. I mean,
Well, that's the one with the stream running right through the middle of it, right?
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so that would be hard to get a development permit. So are these two lots counted as part of the multifamily obligation then? Still, that the subdivision is meant to be providing? Like when the subdivision was first envisioned, it was a mixed use, single family, multifamily. So far it's all single family. We've got Stoneleigh. And now all of the multifamily is being shoved to the end, and now two of the multifamily lots are being gifted as basically conservation areas, because one's right beside the park at the bottom of a cliff, and the other has a stream through it. So they're not going to be multifamily.
I think if council, okay, we can develop an agreement that assigns the full number of multifamily densities, there's like that maximum number in the CDA, to the remaining multifamily areas in the development. So, for example, there is space. So for example, on the seniors area in this phase, and then in that multifamily area in the remainder, we're confident that there's enough area to accommodate the full number of densities. So if this is the direction that council wants to go, we can develop an agreement to complement the CD. I don't know exactly what it is, that ensures that the maximum isn't reduced. There's no number of multifamily densities assigned per area. It's just a total. So we couldn't even calculate what is the specific number that would have been assigned to this area, because the CDA isn't designed that way.
So where does the 5% number come in then? What is that number even taking 5% of then?
Yeah, so so in the case of the multifamily, it must be taking into account only the area, because if my logic follows that we haven't actually assigned, or it could be assigned to the seniors area, which actually does assign a number to an area. So I think the important part is that CDA and the design and the numbers are conceptual. So it isn't a precise plan, which is how it's left itself open to questions like this.
Okay.
But we think we can address that.
Okay,
if
but
that's important to council.
it seems like now you're trying to squeeze the maximum density onto a lot like ML24, which we've just discussed is on a steep slope, and it's going to be very difficult to put the maximum number of units on that lot. So we're basically losing out our the multifamily end of this, it feels like to me. But moving on. If we do get a bunch of multifamily up there, have we got any plans for a traffic study? Or should we do a traffic study before we do this? With that many more new units up there, all going to be trying to get in and out of two roads. They'll be coming on to Penrith, and they'll be coming down Kendall, and that's already we're having traffic issues and problems and complaints and all the things that go with it on Kendall with the density we have. And if we greatly increase that, that will still be the preferred route out of town, rather than coming through downtown. We're going to more than double traffic on Kendall. So is there any plans on looking at that impact, or how we're going to deal with that?
Yeah, so we do actually have a traffic management plan or a traffic study done already. That's generally part of the subdivision stage that doesn't come to council.
Okay.
So we do have that. And again, at the design stage approval of subdivision, operations will be our engineering would be reviewing all of this. And if a peer review is necessary, then we would have it done, or additional studies if required.
Yeah, and to add to that, there was a traffic study required initially, and then we required an update. I believe the year was 2017.
17 or 2018?
Yeah.
So not too long ago.
And so that update, that recent update, would have taken into account the densities that we are talking about in this phase, and didn't have any additional recommendations. The question at that time was, are the off-site works related to traffic still sufficient to accommodate this development, because they were established so relatively long ago, and that's the traffic circle, the changes to that intersection at Cumberland Road and 4th, and then the changes to Penrith and the upgrade to Egremont. And at that time, the updated study found that, yes, those were all adequate to accommodate the expected traffic volume.
But I'm just quite sure that if we double the number of people up there, the issues on Kendall that we're going to hear about are going to also double. We're already hearing all the complaints on, about Kendall Road, and that this is fixing the circle at the bottom will be beneficial, but just won't solve the volume of cars that will be going up and down that hill.
Troy, could I just jump into related to this? And I don't know. This is. Is that okay?
Go ahead.
One of the solutions I see, and this is outside the purvey of these phases, is another arterial out to Bevan Road that might take care of a lot of these problems that people see, or take care of the traffic. Has that ever been brought up? I know it's very far in the future, and it's a little bit of imagination here, but at the same time, given the likely course of development going to the north here, is that something that's come before staff or been suggested?
Yeah, it is. I think we, at the conceptual level, that's information that is in the sort of the conceptual level planning of a potential connection through those lands that we call stagecoach.
Yeah.
So yes,
It's speculative at
yes,
this
it's
point,
sort of on the
obviously.
radar, the bigger picture, conceptual idea.
Yeah, staff are aware, and it's definitely been brought up very conceptually at this point.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks, Troy.
Just one last one. What's your interpretation of the clause G in the CDA, the one that's about the executed housing agreement? You mentioned that this would be at the design stage, but so when exactly would that come, and how can we make a decision if we don't have all of the details before us?
So this is a requirement for a housing agreement related to the seniors parcel. Yes, a requirement in the CDA. So that is a requirement for this subdivision. And it would be, it's a requirement before final approval. There's like a whole long list of things. Many of them are technical and engineering related, but that is also one of them. And that does need to come to council because it's adopted by bylaw. And it comes later because of there's just the decisions council has to make now could have an impact on the timing of the entire development. So the preparation of that legal document of the housing agreement will wait until some of these decisions have first been made, and then that will come back to council. If everything moves ahead, probably within a year of the approval of the development permit. That's sort of kind of the time scale we're talking about with subdivision.
Okay, and then is that a plan, or what is exactly an executed housing agreement? Does that mean that there are concrete plans for that to be built, or is that just a conceptual plan that may get done once all the single-family lots are sold?
It's like it's a covenant, basically, on title that that puts in this other document the requirements for whatever requirements there are related to eligibility for living there and any kind of rent control. So that would be sort of the age or income levels. And the idea is this would be registered on title because once the subdivision is complete, it sort of replaces that component of the CDA, but could also add more detail. So it would become in advance of any building plans.
So it's just it's a covenant, it's more, it's a covenant that runs on the land then.
Right.
So that it's no guarantee of anything actually being built there.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay.
I think that answers most of my concerns for now. I'll probably think of more between now and when the APC runs through this.
Anything else? Anything else from Councillor Kettler? Yeah, go ahead, Councillor Kettler.
Thanks so much. Yeah, just going back to what Councillor Tarian was talking about, some of the access issues. I think that having the developer push all the multifamily to this last phase and the far corners of this development is quite problematic. Like the councillor was talking about, there's going to be so many cars and really not great access and egress. I don't really agree with that lane. And I think it probably does provide at least emergency access to that multifamily. I would think, right? I don't think that you can have a huge, on the other side of the lane, that huge multifamily development with just the one access. So I have concern there. We really should have been putting these multifamily in the early phases of development. That's what we're striving for, is density closer to the center of town, not on the far outreaches of this development, and in the densely forested part of the development as well. So yeah, big concerns around the number of vehicles that we will be having in there with the densities that are planned here. I would certainly want to look at another arterial road, as mentioned by Councillor Barecki. And then the access across the ravine to the REM lot, which is not being developed in this phase, but I hear that it will be sold off to another developer for multifamily. And I just can't imagine that level of density crossing our little ecologically sensitive ravine every day. That just doesn't make sense. It's really unfortunate that the multifamily has all been pushed to this corner, and the access and egress is not great. I would like to see a better proposal for that. And just one more thing on the park, on the Mine Park. Instead of doing that straight road, I think it would be better to give us more of a rounded park that would then be something a little bit like on Rydell, where I live. It slows people down to have that little S curve in the road. And in fact, most people choose to go down Kendall instead of going down Rydell because of that little S, because it does slow you down. So I think instead of doing that straight chute, which won't have any driveway access on it, so definitely people will be going fast, that we put an S curve in there that would accommodate a really nice park instead of such a linear park there. Any thoughts on that?
Sorry, I'm not sure if there's a specific
You
question
stumped
or
staff.
just thoughts. Sorry.
Yeah, so I guess about the access, can we talk about the another arterial road, possibly that links up to Bevan, and then also the lane and emergency access for for that multifamily lot 24.
I'm not sure if a road to Bevan is within the scope of this development permit, but I can say that any emergency access, the lot couldn't be developed without proper design, which would be reviewed by the engineering department. That's not my wheelhouse. Unfortunately, I can't speak to design protocol. I don't even know what the word is, but that is something that I have confidence in, like the engineering department. It just couldn't be built. It's also reviewed by the fire department. I don't believe we have any other examples of a multifamily that only has one access. I know like the Stoneleigh has one that it has a bollard, but again, I think this would be covered at the subdivision design stage approval, and would have to meet guidelines for access and egress for any multifamily development.
Yeah, to add to that, I think certainly the lane could be used as a secondary or like emergency access to that multifamily site, but wouldn't be primary access to the primary driveway.
Yeah, and just to speak to the lane a bit more, I guess the idea is to get the driveways for lots 10 through 18 off of Penrith, which is steep and will have a sidewalk and bike path down it. So the less driveways across the multi-use path, the better. So there will still be some driveways at the bottom, but it's less of, on the hill. So that's sort of the intent behind it.
So the bike path and the sidewalk are on the, what direction is that? East side
The west side.
of the, oh, it's on this side?
Yeah. And again, we haven't gotten to design stage, but at this time, the sidewalk and multi-use path is proposed to be on the west side.
I could comment on the another part of Councillor Kettler's question about the traffic volumes and access. So that is a pretty significant part of the review of a subdivision, and was certainly has been considered by staff. I think the comments and concerns we can certainly take back. But it's not really part of the development permit. So, I think that we have so far been satisfied with the traffic studies that we have for this development. And what we do in subdivision is we do require where important, access to lands beyond to allow for these future connections. So there is a road ending off of, I think it's Lindale, I think, that goes off to these lands that you would cross over to get to Bevan, and that was required at an earlier stage of subdivision. So that's typically how this situation is handled, where you can't require that, or you don't typically require that road be built unless it's considered to be like 100% essential to safety, for example, or fire access. But you do build that in for the future. So that's what has been done in this case. Leave that open for an additional road in the future.
Councillor Tyrion, did you have something
Yeah,
else?
I had one more question that I'd missed here. Just concerning the final development, the area to the southwest of the Ravine Park. Is that now all supposed to be multifamily? Has all the multifamily been pushed into there as well, or is that going to be a typical mix that was envisioned at the start of this whole process, whatever that mix or ratio that you're using was?
The conceptual site plan shows that entirely as multifamily, but variations up to about 5% are possible in that area. So there could be a small number of single family, but it would need to be entirely or almost entirely multifamily to meet the CDA.
Okay, so I've got I don't really like that. I would like to see that as a mixed family neighborhood at the proper ratios that were originally envisioned for that neighborhood as well, and then meaning that more of the multifamily would have to be moved into this phase where we're at. So to keep the rate, to keep it actually as it was envisioned as mixed neighborhoods, rather than having a bunch of apartments on the top of the Camp Road houses. And I would much rather see a mixed neighborhood up there. Again, because it just feels like at every stage the multifamily is pushed away, pushed away, pushed away, and then eventually everybody's just going to walk away from it and say, oh well, nah, it doesn't make economic sense to build this multifamily here, and we just don't get any.
I think something we could.
And that's how it feels like this whole subdivision has gone as we've moved along.
I think that something we can provide is an idea of what kind of numbers of units we're talking about. And I think for that remainder portion, based on the numbers that there are and how many there would be, it really could be like a fairly low density multifamily situation. But I think, I know we can provide a little bit of context for that to help council visualize what the sort of maximum densities would look like and how they could be divided up in the multifamily.
And yes, and I'd like to see some of that, like I say, brought forward into this subdivision to provide some more multifamily. Maybe at the, I don't know, on the map there, there's many single family lots there right at the end of. Yeah.
I think that, yeah, we can provide some information about what council's options are, and I think that I know you do have options outside of this development permit. For example, to change the zoning. The zoning can still change. You can still change the zoning even though there is a CDA, but it depends. There's things that can be done like in addition to the CDA that are not necessarily in conflict with it. And that might be the tool to do what you were talking about. But if council does want more information on that, I think we'd need a bit of time to come back with it.
Yeah, that's generally what I'm hearing is very much concern about getting particularly the seniors housing, because that's what our housing needs report says we need, and multi-family housing. Our housing needs report definitely doesn't say we need more single-family dwellings. Yet here we are. So I have a few things. The road, I also have concern about that narrow road. While I don't generally mind narrower roads, that's fine, but we need to, if that's going to be multifamily, I'm just not sure how you work the road anywhere else on that property, because the slope comes down where you hit ML 23, and there's just not an opportunity for another road coming around the bottom side along with multifamily in there. I can't envision it. So I think that would be really helpful for council to just get some idea of what the layout of those, the seniors and the multifamily, where they may potentially go, where the roads might go, because before we move forward with this, we do want to ensure that we can get that housing. That's the housing we need. The other thing I wanted to speak to is the road going out to Bevins. So this very often, I think, for the people who live up in that area, feels like a separate community. And putting a road out that goes out and bypasses even the downtown core really just solidifies that disconnect between that area. So we didn't manage to get good pathways, we didn't manage to get good green spaces that connect it to the rest of the community, and that is concerning to me. I would hate to see a road going out to Bevan that just expedites people leaving the community as quickly as possible. While I am very concerned about adding all of this traffic to Kendall, because it's very likely that they will come out Kendall or they'll come down Penrith and then they'll end up on Dunsmuir, and that's going to be a whole nother traffic situation. I think I read somewhere in the report that there's up to 580 something dwellings in the multifamily and seniors combined. Another 500 potential dwellings
that's right,
that we
yeah.
need to fit. Okay, and so in ML25, that's not going to be so much of a problem, but as we go into that lower piece over Road B through the ravine, that's going to be a massive problem to do multifamily in there. Because how are those people going to get out? and a lot of that is very sloped and wetlandish. So, yes, again, concerns there. My other concern about, so now going back up to the top off Lindale, or I guess it'll be Beaufort, as Beaufort will continue. So lots 40 and 41. So the other Lindale properties on that side, 42, 43, 44, 45, 46, all did the lock block things because there's a massive height difference there, and so those corner lots are also sitting quite far up, and I can just imagine what a 2 or 3 story house on top of that is going to look like for the rest of the neighborhood. And so is there something we can do there to push the homes, if there are homes built there, can we push them closer to, like, I don't know how that seems, it's a giant rock bluff. So either we're going to blast it, or it's going to be giant houses sitting on top looking down on all the neighbors, which doesn't seem very neighborhood friendly to me. So that concern as well. And then I appreciate the option to manage each lot with a development permit, but that would not apply to the northern portion, right? Where those like 29 to 46 lots are. And so how do we manage concrete blocks on those lots and just the varying heights that are going to happen there because of the rocky outcrops, and the landscape up there is just, it's beautiful views. But if you put a house on top of it, it's going to just be a monster.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I mean, yeah, it is hard to get away from the hills when you're building on a mountain. Obviously, it's all going to be tiered. Unfortunately, some people are always going to be higher than the other ones. But yeah, obviously, we can do our best to, I mean, I believe the slope at the bottom is green space? No.
Yeah,
Is
there's
that the right spot?
there's the little green space,
Boulevard.
but then, that's the bottom, and then the rock face comes up, right?
Yeah.
So are those the lots you guys looked at instead of the other park dedication?
Yeah.
And I get that accessibility is an issue, but that would make me feel a lot better if that was a park and not potentially a giant dwelling.
so with the subdivision requirements, a grading plan is required, and that's prepared at the design stage. So we don't have that yet, or not. We have an early version. We don't have the final, and we have required for this phase that all planned retaining walls are planned at the time of the subdivision, so that we can review them we also know that many retaining walls, depending on which side of the lot they're on, would require a variance from council if they were to be above that 1.5 blocks high. So that's also something that we're aware of to help manage that situation. If council is concerned about the height on top of a a hill, I mean, you can make a zoning bylaw amendment to reduce the maximum height. That would
And
be
those
the
could just be
tool
single
available to you.
story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And maybe I could also mention something else, which is kind of related. Well, I mean, council does have the ability to upzone these single-family lots and allow, let's say, not just a single dwelling, but duplex, triplex, fourplex. And this is the direction the province is going in trying to encourage, if not require, local governments to do something about this. And we don't have the details yet. So, I mean, that is not directly related to the particular decisions in front of you related to Coal Valley, but I think perhaps it helps with the bigger picture of this development. And upzoning is not in conflict with the CDA.
I did also think of that. So, and then the other thing I just have a question about regarding so the sidewalk now you tell me is coming down the west side of Penrith. So I'm just trying to figure out access to the fan house. So no matter what we do with that park, and I'm in agreement with Councillor Kettler that a rounder, a bulb there would slow traffic, and also, I just think it will slow traffic and potentially decrease the amount of fill that needs to go over the fan house and all of that, that area. So how are people getting, like the plan doesn't have where the crosswalks are, how are people getting from all those houses over across the street to the fan house?
Yeah, again, those details come at subdivision design stage. I believe, as I think it mentions it in the traffic calming potentially, that
I just
the
had a
three-way
real struggle understanding that.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
Not an
Essentially
engineer.
that each crossroad, so say like Road B, Kendall, Road D, those are all going to have four-way
Okay.
intersections. And I believe the transit stop would be on the fan house side, just below the fan house. So there would be a crosswalk and bus pull out with sidewalk on that side there. So potentially connection at that point into the fan house at that four-way, I guess it would be a three-way intersection, sorry.
Yeah.
Three-way intersection there. And yeah, so that would be the connection there. And then again, at the bottom of Penrith, where the Silport Park, we don't have a formalized trail right now because, it's quite steep. But there would also be a crosswalk there to connect to Silport Park. And then staff would have to look at, accessibility of that trail. But there would also be a cross there with like a way to get into the park. So
Okay, yeah, 'cause-
just wouldn't go the whole way.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's another one of my concerns is people coming out of that park really just shoot out onto that road. Like there's so there needs to be a mechanism there to prevent that somehow.
Yeah. So I believe the crosswalk would be directly like across the street to where the fan house is at the south end of it, potentially. But again, like I said, nothing's been formalized because we
Yeah.
haven't gotten to design stage. So I don't have, examples of it at this point. But
Okay, so, to staff, is Councillor Kettler, is there any more questions? Okay. Go ahead, Councillor Kettler.
Thanks. Yeah. So I was going to ask about canopy cover. As we all know, no trees have been saved in the development up to this point. And it's very much a sort of blasting, clearing everything type development up to this point. And I wouldn't want to see that happen with this last phase, just because it is heavily forested, in particular lot ML25, the southeast part of that has a really nice big stand of trees. as well as on ML24. Again, a really nice big stand of trees on there. And I know we haven't got our tree bylaw completely through, but maybe we would be by the time this came around. How could we apply that, as well as the other thing that we've talked about, which is developing more with the land. I hear that we've sort of moved the blasting permits to a sort of more per lot basis, but you know, those 2 lots that have those heavily treed areas are single lots, single large lots. So would they just be allowed to blast away there and completely clear everything? Or what kind of environmental permit would be required for that to happen?
They would be required to do an environmental protection development permit that would come to council, and so you would be viewing the blasting plan. That would be at council discretion.
And land clearing.
And land clearing. Any land alteration, essentially, you have to have your DP1 approved before you can do any land alteration. So there's some really great potential to protect some of these stands of trees on a case-by-case basis. Each lot would come to council with a proposal.
And then our tree protection bylaw would come into force at that time?
Yes, I believe so.
Yeah, if
It's
the
hard-
tree protection bylaw is adopted, then you have both the development permit and the tree protection bylaw. But if the tree protection bylaw hasn't been adopted yet, or if it somehow doesn't apply to this area because we haven't got to the details of it, then it would be the environmental development permit only.
Yeah.
And so through that, then the areas to be retained and not cleared, or areas to be restored, would be prescribed through the development permit.
Okay. Councillor Therrien, go ahead.
But then that's going to be forcing us into the situation where we have to choose between density and trees. And because all of the density has been pushed into these smaller areas, we're not going to get the density we want if we, right? We're facing the bad choices. It keeps putting us into having to choose less density if we want to save the trees, rather than putting the density out into the moonscape areas where we don't have to make those choices. Yeah, anyway, there's no question there, it's just a comment.
So can I ask, is there still opportunity then to rezone those lots to make it so we're more adaptive site planning in those lots?
The existing, you're talking about the whole application?
I'm talking specifically about ML25 and ML24.
I believe site adaptive planning is part of the environmental development permit, so it would be covered under that.
Yeah, but I guess what Councillor Therrien is saying is if we are obligated to give a certain number of units within there, we wouldn't necessarily be able to protect the trees. So if we downzone to something less dense, then that would give us the opportunity to protect those trees. And is that still possible?
Yeah, I'm just thinking here.
I do think it's possible, because we do have, again, I know I've said the development permit tools, but potentially the tree bylaw as well. It might be hard, well, just as staff to comment without seeing a proposal for a footprint. Like it could be an apartment, like it allows, right now the multifamily could take many forms. Yeah.
And then to add to that, I mean, looking at multi-lot 25, it's I'm trying to think, is it 3 or 4 acres and it's 4 acres and 180 something units, as a max for that entire lot, which is quite of a low density. So I'm already starting to think kind of about the opposite of how can we shift some of the density to that lot actually. To put more density there. It's closer to town. It's much easier road access. So that we can definitely do, which would then potentially be able to reduce the number of units left on multi-lot 24 and the remainder. I think there's enough space to add more density. Like Melena said, depends on the form of what kind of are we talking about, apartments or something low rise, to do that.
And there isn't a specific density that we know of in that area yet. So it could be 4 stories, could be 6, could be 8. We don't know.
Well, there is a height maximum. But
There is a
There
height
is a
max.
height
It does
maximum.
allow apartment, I believe.
It does allow apartment.
Which has a height max, but I'd have to look at the zoning
Yeah.
for the exact height.
Yeah.
But it does allow for a variety of multifamily forms.
Okay. And then the other thing is the road, so Road B, which was a road in the initial plan and then not a road, and now it's there to go into the unnamed lot at the below the park. But that is an old like logging road, I guess. And so there's a crushed culvert, and the connection between the top of the park and the bottom of the park has been severed by that road. And I know that we are looking for connectivity and water systems and all of that. That's part of the EDPA. So how do we reconcile that when the park, it's not park because it's going to be a road, but it's also still part of the ravine and very, very wet in there.
I think you would use like best practices for constructing the stream crossing to allow the species flow and water flow underneath it.
So we could require a rebuild of that.
I,
Crossing.
I believe the biologist does speak to it in the aquatic ecosystems report about the section 11 that would have to be done and best practices. So
Okay.
it's definitely on the radar and mentioned in the report. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so are you good? Jesse's back.
Sorry.
okay.
So I just wanted to ask about ML 25. It does back onto existing houses, and I was hoping that we would have a buffer. I think it says that there's a right of way there. Is that the intent of that? Is to have a treed buffer behind those houses?
Yes.
In fact, there's a mature tree covenant in that area that was covenanted in a previous phase that would really requires that buffer.
Okay, and is that through that whole area, bottom area,
Yes.
that covenant?
Yes.
Okay.
And can I ask about play parks? So through this whole development, there hasn't been a play park put in for any of these homes, except I guess the multifamily put in their own little one. It doesn't seem like any of the land that we have been given is suitable. Is there still opportunity for us to go back to the developer and ask for something like was talked about in the report at the top of Beaumont?
Is that what ML 27 is? Is that our potential park up there?
Potentially, it would be transferred to the village as a fee simple lot, and then it would be up to council to decide what they want to do with it. So, yeah, potentially.
Right,
That's
so
right.
it's not considered a park dedication
No, it would be fee simple lot transferred to the village.
because all of the park dedication has been covered through the ravine and the orchard and all of that, the
Solport.
greenway.
Correct.
Solport. Okay. Yeah, it's challenging at this stage as we come to the end of this development, because we're, we are left with a really wonderful green space to be developed, and a lot of continuing problems with the initial development that we're trying to avoid. So I do appreciate staff's dedication to this file. I can only imagine the number of hours that we've all spent looking at these. So given the feedback, do you think it's time to refer to APC, or should we go back and come back again, or what's staff's recommendation there?
Well, I think that if a decision a decision on the fan house covenant amendment could require a redesign of the subdivision if the request to modify the shape is not approved. And that would require the applicant to redesign the subdivision and make a new subdivision application. So, if you would like the Advisory Planning Commission's input on that, then you should certainly, I think, refer it sooner rather than later. And it sounds to me that if this subdivision is able to go ahead as proposed with a change to the fan house shape, then he might be in a position to get the APC's feedback on everything. Then staff has a number of things we'll provide some more information on, and then we may be able to address, certainly possible to address everything in only one more report back to council, and then a second referral to the APC might not be needed. So depending on, if you're not in a position to make any decision today, then a referral to APC would probably be helpful.
I'm conscious of the fact that if we don't allow the fan house to become a linear park, then the fan house reverts to our liability, and we don't get a park there at all. So I do think, maybe I'll just ask council, what would you guys like to do? Would you like to refer it, or send it back to staff for more changes, or?
I'm ready to refer it.
I'm also ready to refer it to the APC.
I couldn't vote for this in the form that it's in. So we can refer it to the APC, but if it comes back substantially the same, I do not think I will be voting for this.
Councillor Kettler?
Yeah, I kind of feel like we shouldn't. I think there's a few things that really need to be addressed before it goes to the APC, and I don't want to be wasting their time by putting forward something that really isn't going to be possible. And I don't think that we should be held hostage over the fan house either. I think the developer would be on the hook for some restoration work, as they did just dump a whole bunch of fill down into that area. It was much more heavily vegetated before with trees and stuff like that. So even if it was to revert to us, there is some restoration work that I believe would need to happen on the side of the developer. And again, I don't think that the linear park is good from a traffic management perspective either. So I definitely would want to take this back to the developer and put those issues that we talked about today to him again, and not waste the time of the APC if we're not going to go with this plan. I do want their input, but it seems like it wouldn't be totally sincere for us to put this forward when we have all these changes in the back of our minds.
Right. So I guess I'm trying to sort out how we, because I also want to hear from the APC, but I also want those issues resolved. And I wonder if the conversation we've had here and the and then the input of the APC might result in changes after that. Is that a route we go? Or do we want to be closer to our final product before we refer to the APC? So there's the traffic issue that people are concerned about. I'm not sure what the resolution of that is, but traffic concerns with the multifamily coming out onto either Penrith or onto Kendall. And the buffer and
Multifamily being pushed to the end.
Yes.
Yeah.
that's-
yeah, and integrating some multifamily into the existing
And,
the northern
and
portion.
making sure that the ratio on the remainder lot is
Doable.
actually at a ratio rather than just all the multifamily shoved into that corner. And it being actually a mixed developed or a mixed neighborhood in there is I'd like to see. I've been told not too far long ago that the members of the APC were quite bored and that they would like
They're looking for
to
some work.
have things to do. So I'm okay with like I say, I don't think I would vote for this in the form it's in, but I'm happy to send it to the APC and get their comments and see what the community thinks about this as well.
I'm inclined the same way.
And just a point of clarity, we can come back and do a second referral to the APC if this is fairly expedient.
Yeah, I mean, we can refer it. They can give us their feedback. We can work our feedback and their feedback and try again and not refer it again because we've already got their feedback on what they think is appropriate. Is how I would see it moving forward. I don't see a second referral. I would see we're going to address their concerns, we're going to address our concerns, and then hopefully we move forward without a second referral.
Sure.
Oh.
Do I have to read
Did
this?
you want to
Can I
speak?
ask for
Yeah.
just clarification on the traffic question? So I'm trying to understand specifically what information you're looking for.
I mean, I guess it's around the multifamily. How are we going to accommodate the traffic of the multifamily on top of this subdivision?
So additional traffic studies for subdivision? Sorry, just not sure what that looks like on.
Yeah, and well, this is why we're stuck because without a design of the multifamily area, we don't really know what the impact is going to be because we don't know the number of dwellings, we don't know the type of dwellings, we don't know. Without the even housing agreement, we don't know how old the people are who are living in the seniors' housing, so we don't know what their needs are. So it's really hard to make a decision on something that's not outlined. But we do know that we have 57,
64, I think.
64. Oh, yep,
Single
60. We have 60 plus homes with at least 2 people, probably 2 vehicles, coming as additional traffic down Penrith or Kendall.
I guess we just need clarification on which of the approvals we need to come back to. So there's the amendment to the Fan House Covenant area. Is that where the traffic concerns come in, or the reconstruction and resurfacing of Penrith, or the Egremont? Like, I'm just because to be in the scope of the approvals, we need
Yeah.
to attach it to something.
The shape of the fan house is what's causing the road to be straight
Okay.
and fast. I think is the concern.
Okay.
And so, yeah, I think it's the shape of the park. And the variance on the road, whatever it's called, that comes down behind lots 10 to 18. Because if that becomes a main access route for the multifamily in ML24, then it probably needs to be wider than 7 meters. And if
Maybe
it-
I could just provide a little bit of help with the traffic question. So it sounds like what you've described, but then there's also just concern about the traffic volumes and the existing road network able to handle it. So this is an interesting one where questions like that related to subdivision do not typically come before council, because, and so that's usually addressed at the staff level through your existing bylaws about subdivision approval. And in this case, I think that when council does speak about concerns and staff who are making those decisions hear it, we obviously do take it into account. But that one, there isn't a specific approval of council that relates to those traffic volumes. And we also have the CDA that is this, agreement with the developer that stands. So I think in terms of traffic volumes, that's something that staff who are, approving the subdivision will hear, but I don't think that there's any approval of council that would necessarily modify that within the existing CDA.
We're talking about volume. I also feel like we're also talking about safety. It's a huge part of this for me personally. Like the volume is not necessarily my concern. The safety is definitely my concern. Like first 8 years, 9 years I've been in council, listening to Candle people, the same exact thing is going to happen. So for me, the safety is an issue for sure. And I feel like, straighten the road adds some danger. And as Councillor Kettler pointed out, without any driveways on that street, it just literally, there's no reason to slow down.
Yeah, so that part is certainly relates to your decision on the fan house covenant area. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So that is absolutely a relationship there. In the ravine buffer question, I've got these 3 things on the list. The
Yeah.
ravine buffer, that is, yes, definitely a part of the development permit considerations. So that is something, yes, clearly related to council's decision on the development permit. So that is within the scope of those approvals. And we can
Okay.
provide some information on that.
Okay.
And then in terms of the multifamily share in the northern portion and moving the areas around, that's that's again in the sphere of conceptual site plan and the comprehensive development agreement and subdivision approval. So not directly related to council's decision on the development permit. It could be related to council's decision on the development variance permit. If that's a design that you're not prepared to provide that variance for, then that can lead to adjustments in the lot layout. But otherwise, that's within that subdivision approval role of staff.
Okay. I think, and maybe it was just me, but the traffic, I know there's a lot of traffic calming plans that have been put on Penrith, but the map, just trying to understand how what they actually are, is challenging. So I'm not sure if we can get more clarity on that as well before it goes to APC. Not to come back to us, but to make sure that's included for APC. I think that would be helpful. Yeah.
So just to reiterate a bit of what Councillor Sullivan's safety concerns. It feels like each time there's a development permit issued for the multifamily unit, they look at egress and, how are we gonna get these cars out of here if there's a problem? And it puts them onto the road. But is there an overall safety plan? This whole area is on a wildfire interface. all of these houses have to exit down Kendall?
Well, they would come up Penrith. Sorry.
Well, not if there's a fire there. If Penrith is closed by fire, then
Right.
the only way out is Kendall, and everything's gotta go down Kendall. And if everybody's trying to get out of there at once,
Yep,
right, like, so each, like I said, each individual, it seems, is looked at in isolation, but there doesn't seem to be, Rob's got a comment on this.
So it just,
Just in respect, and Mike can speak to this too, just in respect to the fire egress and access.
Do you mind coming to the mic? Sorry, Jesse's can't hear you. Councillor Kettler can't hear you.
Just with
Thanks.
respect to the emergency egress and access out of Coal Valley in the event of a fire. So this was looked at a number of years ago with the fire department. And Coal Valley at the time was asked to put a gate at the top end of Penrith and where it meets Maryport and construct that gravel portion so that if residents in an emergency needed to get out, they could also get out that way. And that's quite common with developments that are occurring in phases. We look at kind of how to address that kind of a situation. So it has been, in some respects, been addressed until we get to the next phase.
So, but has it ever been addressed with this volume, with the maximum volume of people in the subdivision? And looking at it, if one of the roads is inaccessible and you've got to get everybody out the other one.
well, I mean, I think that's being addressed through the requirement that the Penrith extension be constructed. So there was an earlier proposal. This is why this is phase 10 and 11 combined. There's an earlier proposal to divide it into two and just keep deferring the completion of the Penrith extension. But there was the staff working in the subdivision approvals at the time said, we can't accept that. We actually need to have a second official way in and way out before we're building more homes here. So that's how that's addressed with this two-way. There's two-way in and two-way out.
All right, just want to make sure that it is, yeah, that's
So I think what I'm hearing is council would prefer that the driveways actually came onto Penrith because that is going to slow people down, and I don't know whether that's I don't know what the engineering. Hello, sorry, pardon, Rachel. Councillor Kettler.
Yeah, well, I think that the proposed bike lane is going where the driveways would have gone onto Penrith, which is part of the reason why it's flipped around the other way. But again, that's not necessarily safe for the cyclists. And we haven't seen what the roadway will look like. I mean, I think it would be a lot easier if we were given conceptual drawing, like we were on Sutton and like we had for Bevan Road with the cycling lane, right? So we can see, is it a separated lane, and conceptually, what does that look like? That would probably help us a lot, but I realize that that's not at this juncture. But of course, it impacts the roadways and how the roadways are designed. So it's very difficult to make this decision on the roadways without having that information. Also, with those two large multifamily lots, we don't know what road systems are going to be within those lots. So how can we design the external road system when we don't know the internal road system of ML24 and ML25? Like, how do we make them line up when we haven't seen them? We have no idea what those systems are going to look like.
Do you want to respond to that, or?
Yeah. So the requirement for the subdivision related to the active transportation path or multi-use path is that it is separated from traffic. So if that helps, I can provide you that information. Yeah, and exactly, there is that challenge of timing where we are not at the design stage of exactly what that would look like. We've required that the design follow the current BC active transportation guidelines, which is quite a recent set of guidelines, which for active transportation facilities. And then in terms of the internal road network on these other lots, I think the developer in some ways confines themselves by not having designed those lots yet, and they'll have to make the development work with the subdivision that's approved at this stage. And it could be, there might not be further subdivision of those lots. It could be like a single development, or it could be strata subdivision potentially. We don't know what it will be, but that, yes, I understand the concern, but in some ways that it could also be seen as the developer's risk.
Okay, and then so another, I think, like I said earlier, the road design with the traffic calming measures and the side and the crossings and all of that stuff, and where the bike lane. So is the bike lane just like there in front of those? Like, how is the bike lane connecting to the rest of the development? So if you're coming down from Lindale and you're going to the forest, you're going to want a bike lane from the very top of Lindale all the way down out through Penrith, right?
Yeah, the plan is to come from the end of Lindale all the way
Okay.
down,
Okay.
and connect to Penrith and into town.
Yeah, so that would be really helpful to see as well. Just the more information we can get onto including a map that has both the trees and the contour lines, so we can see where the lots actually are no longer developable, where the slope is, and the information on the roads. I think all would be helpful, and the buffer lines as well in the park, all that.
Can I just jump in with one more request about, we had said it before, but all the maps we have are just cut off with the Cole Valley Estates development. We don't get to see the waterways outside of the development and how they flow in and out of these lands. And we've requested that multiple times, but every time this comes back, we get these very low detail maps and the external land around and waterways never seem to be included on that.
And there's clearly contiguous wetland that goes through the ravine outside of Cole Valley that is connected all the way up the side of Cole Valley and connects to the stream that was moved up at Lindale. So that it's really important information for us to understand if we're trying to manage water flow and flooding and connectivity of water and all that stuff that we're supposed to be looking at. Okay. So there's a recommendation to refer to. Yes. Does staff have the information? Do you have the information you need?
Yes, I think
Okay.
so.
Okay. Great. Go for it, Councillor Tarian.
I'd like to recommend that council refer the development and development variance permits, Cole Valley Estates Phase 1011 report to the advisory committee.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor? Councillor Kettler?
Yeah, I'm still not sure about. I think we would
Just
want it
need
to
a
come back
vote,
to
actually. I just need a vote right now because we're in the middle of
I'll-
voting.
I'll vote against.
Okay.
I think it needs to go back at once the changes are made. So thanks.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you. That was a lot of work.
Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, community grant program applications. Rachel, yeah. From one good thing to another.
Thank you. Let's get my page ready here.
Yeah.
for valve. Something. You ready, Vicky?
Sorry, Neil's just on a bio break. Take two.
I wish I was better at computers.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Here he comes.
No.
No,
Bio.
I think he wants to hear the intro, but yes, I think he can also hear us. So go ahead, Rachel. Thank you.
So, as council knows, the community grant program aims to provide a limited amount of funding for one-time special projects and seed funding to community organizations to provide social, cultural, recreation, and environmental services that benefit the residents of Cumberland. Council has a $10,000 budget for this year's program, and we were a bit late with the application call because of the budget this year following the election. So the application deadline was April 11th, and we received 4 applications before the deadline, and two applications were received after the deadline. I'd like to comment about the recommendation to refer the application from the Beaufort Family Health Society back to staff. Since the society made their presentation to council in February and submitted their grant application, staff have been looking at options for funding that request, and based out of the same funding source of the landfill host community funds, but through a different tool in the funding toolkit. So we're asking staff to refer that application, or council to refer that application back to staff, and that report will come back to council possibly at the next meeting. So in regards to the late applications and some ineligibility issues, and they're outlined in the staff report, I just wanted to comment that if staff finds that they do have some of that budget unallocated through any awards tonight, that staff could consider having another intake for the grant program as an option. I know the applicants that had some issues with their applications have been, since the staff report was written, have been working to resolve some of those issues. So that I just wanted to mention that is an option for council tonight if you find would like to give some more time for those groups and have another open intake. So, and I'm happy to answer any questions about any of the applications here.
Okay. Okay. Council, questions?
So we've got two. So we currently have just the 2 applications, or is there 3 that are eligible at this point?
There are 3 that are eligible. Staff is recommending that Beaufort Family Health be referred back to staff, though, so that
Okay.
does leave you with 2. The Community Health Network Council does fund that one through the requisition to the CBRD service, so that's just for your information to make that decision to fund it through the grant program as well. And then the 3rd is the Cumberland Culture and Arts Society, which was received on time.
And then the other 3. So the Cumberland Business Association one was ineligible because it wasn't actually coming from the Cumberland Business Association. Is that how I read that in the report?
It's ineligible on the application. In the program, there's a requirement that the applicant not just turn over funding to another individual or a business, and that was the proposal under the application, and there were some issues with the application.
And
But I know there's work to resolve those.
Are they trying to resolve that issue currently? Okay. And then the Scouts one was just simply a few days late,
Yes, that's correct.
and same with the Lush Valley one?
The Lush Valley was late, and the applicant is working on finding a suitable location to house the hives. Because the proposed location wasn't suitable. So, and I don't know if that's been resolved yet, but they are working to find a better location, and the applicant did say that they could hold the program in September, once school's back in session.
So I just want to say, the grant program intake is well known to the applicants, and the process is clear and clearly identified, and people are helped through that process by staff, and it can be a lengthy process. So I'm disinclined to send it back for a whole nother round of funding. We do this once a year, and everyone who applies for grants knows that there's a deadline on a grant application, and you got to get it in by the time the grant application ends, or you don't get the grant. And if you're not eligible, you also don't get the grant. At the same time, I think that the mural project is a great idea, and I think that the Scouts will have an amazing experience and bring that back to our community, which is hugely valuable for them and their families, but also for our community. So it's a bit of a pickle this year, and I wouldn't want us to start messing with the process of the grant applications too much, because it's going to end up, it'll just be a slippery slope, and we'll end up doing this all the time. So that, I just wanted to say that before we have this conversation, because I'm really, having applied for grants for many, many years professionally, I'm like, this is challenging for me. So, but Council, go ahead and say what you think.
Could I just get a point of clarity from staff? Have late applications been approved in the past or considered in the past, or is this a cut and dried thing?
Oh, that's a good question. You're making me think back. Off the top of my head, I'd have to say no, but without 100% certainty.
Okay. I'm just wondering how much it truly matters if you're, like, for example, the honeybee workshops there's a legitimate reason why they might not want it to, or just delayed it a little bit. So
Right, but it's not just late, it's not eligible for what they want to do. They need to rescope the project, so they can come back next year. I mean, we all know that they do great work, and we'd love to have that project in the community, but it's also just not the end of the world if it doesn't happen right now,
Fair enough.
I think.
Well, I'll go. Respecting what the mayor has said with the ineligibility of some of the requests, I think I'd like to give the Cumberland Culture and Arts Society their full ask at $2,000 and the Community Health Network $8,000. That is my.
Thank you.
Mind if I go next then?
Go for it.
I'm inclined to overlook a slightly later application as long as it's in the scope where we're considering it. I think the Scouts put on a pretty compelling presentation here, and that does fall with, it's even the $800 minimum request is, it's fairly meager, but it shows that they do have the support of council here in the community because they do such good work. And again, I feel the art mural project is a valuable one for a minimum request, and then I would allocate the remainder between the 2,000 for the arts and culture and the balance to the Comox Valley Community Health Network.
Can you just give me the numbers for what you've...
Okay.
So Health Network
So
would be...
800 to the Scouts, 2,000 to the Art Mural Project, 2,000 to the Youth Songwriting and Performance Camp, and then Troy, you're the mathematician. Whatever the balance is left from the 10,000 goes towards.
That's 6.8, so that would be 3.2.
Yeah. Okay.
which is about how I had it broken down as well, I think. Did my math work there?
2,800, 4,800.
Yeah.
Yeah. 48. And then the remainder would go to the
Yes, okay, no, so there was only, yeah, so
Yeah.
5,200.
yeah,
$5,200 to the,
to the Comox Valley Community Health Network.
Councillor Kettler, do you want to, or Councillor Terry, did you already finish yours?
no, I'm in agreement with
Spreading it out that way?
Councillor Barecki that I'm willing to overlook and kick the Scouts the $800.
Okay,
and-
Councillor
and
Kettler, what do you think?
a minimum request to the CBA if they can get their, if they can
Ducks
get
in
it
a
through
row.
an eligible
Well,
state.
I think that two of those, two of the ones in the ineligible category still have work to do on their application. So to me, that doesn't really make sense to, they're both late and they are not fully formed yet. So, ideas. So, I don't think I would support them. I think I would like to support the Scouts, but they are in that same category. So it would seem a little bit unfair to pull them out of that ineligible category when they were also late. So I think I would just go with the three eligible ones, and not the late applications.
There's only two.
So right, yeah. So that would just be the Health Network and the Culture and Arts Society.
Yeah, and then we hopefully will help the Beaufort Family Health Society in a different
Different way.
manner.
Yeah.
Just to point out though, the Cumberland Business Association wasn't late. There were just a few issues with how they were trying to use the money. Is that
Yeah.
correct? Yeah.
Ineligible.
And the Lush Valley was both late and ineligible. So yeah, they're off.
Okay, so we're all in agreement about Culture and Arts Society.
Yes.
Correct.
Okay, so we can tick that one off. And we know we want to give some money to the health network. So that's good. So the question is, sounds like the Scouts.
So Councillor Barecki and I would like to take $2,800 out of the remainder, and 800 to the Scouts, and $2,000 to the CBA, provided that they can meet their eligibility requirement.
Yeah, so when I read the Scouts application, it really, it's challenging to see how they still need to raise $26,000. And so I think if we're going to give them money, we give them like more than $800, and really help them along. If we're going to pull them, yeah, so, so if we do two, so you two want to do also the CBA as well.
I'm not married to that request. That's when they could come back next
They
year.
could come back next year.
Also,
Fair enough.
I would definitely like to see a mural on that.
On that wall,
above,
yeah.
Above seeds there at some point.
Yeah.
I think that would look way better than the big blank white wall that's above there now. But
Yeah.
if it happens next year,
Yeah.
I'm also okay with that.
I'd be willing to go with that as well.
Okay.
Give more to the Scouts.
Give more to the
I'm also
Scouts.
happy to do that.
Councillor
Because-
Kettler or Rachel? Which one are you?
It's me this time.
Are you asking what I think about increasing the amount to the Scouts?
Sure.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I'm waiting on the the art project and on the Lush Valley project.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mayor Brown. I should, now that council's contemplating contributing to the Scouts, I did check in with the applicant about how many Scouts are Cumberland residents.
Okay.
And how many are not. And I did get a response. There's 8, I think, that are proposing to go on this trip, and 5 of those were Cumberland/Royston residents. So I didn't get a firm number. So I thought
Nice.
council should have that disclosure.
Okay. Well, they all go to our school.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So 2,000 to so 2,000 to the Arts and or Culture and Arts Society. And Troy, why don't you do this? Sorry, Councillor Tarian, would you mind doing the math for us?
So
If we give, I feel like the health network would be happy to get anywhere between 2 and 5.
So if we give them 5K, then there's 3K left over because we've cut everybody else out, right?
Yep. Yeah.
2, 5, and 3 for the Scouts.
2, 5, and 3. Yes.
Good to go.
For you, works for you. Councillor Kettler.
Yes, good.
Okay. There's a recommendation there, so we need to give those numbers in the first line of the recommendation.
Let me just find it here, and I'd like to recommend that council allocate 2023 community grant funding in the amounts of $2,000 to the Arts Society, $5,000 to the Comox Valley Health Network, and $3,000 to Cumberland First Scouts Troop for their upcoming trip.
Seconder.
Second.
All in favor?
Then I would also like to recommend that council refer the Beaufort Family Health Society community grant application to staff to explore other funding options.
Also second.
All in favor. Thank you. And we would respectfully request that both Lush and the CBA come back with those applications because we like your projects.
Love to see them next year.
Next year.
Yeah, next year when we get to do all this again. Okay. Elevate the Arts, Community Arts and Culture Event Contract.
Okay, so the report is in front of you. The report writer is not here tonight, and so I can probably try to answer most of council's questions if you'd like. And if there's questions that I can't answer, then we likely would have to defer the report to the next meeting.
Any questions? Okay.
So this was, yeah, this is just extending our current insurance to Elevate the Arts to run the summer concert series and the 125th anniversary, correct?
That's correct. It's for the individual event manager liability. The liability for the village's events would be under our normal liability insurance.
Okay, and then we would have to do a little extra due diligence, a little extra staff time for some extra due diligence to make sure that everything is working right. Is that how I read that? Under the financial implications part?
Oh, the claim side of it.
Yeah.
Is that what you mean?
By approving the proposed proposal, the village is
yeah.
providing clothing, no, where did I see? Operational implications.
Oh,
Village staff
operational.
will have to provide more oversight.
Oh, yes, yeah. Because they're under our associate membership. Yes, we would have to. Just to ensure. It's similar to what you approved for the jump park maintenance as well.
Okay.
Yeah. And this is different from I was confused because the Cumberland Events Society insures events in Cumberland. And so I was confused by, is this different? This is a different type of insurance that they
is.
can't provide, right?
Yes, it's a different type of insurance. It's for the individual event managers, because likely if something goes wrong, they would be named and the village would be named. So we have to make sure that
Right.
both are.
Okay.
And it's a village event, so the event society helps out other nonprofits, but this is an individual manager.
Right, not for our specific
That's right.
events. Okay. Okay, there's a recommendation there.
All right, I'll move the council provide liability insurance to Elevate the Arts for the delivery of arts and culture event service providers through the Municipal Insurance Association Associate Members Program, and authorize the Chief Administrative Officer to enter into service provider agreements with community arts and culture event service providers for the provision of liability insurance.
Thank you. Seconder, Councillor Brecky, all in favor? Thank you, that's carried. Transportation Master Plan. Thanks, Rob.
Good evening, Your Worship and Council. Good to see you tonight. So I've got two reports here. The first one is the update to the Transportation Master Plan process for this year. So in the report, we kind of outline some work that's taken place to date, some of the community engagement processes that will be commencing on May 24th. That'll be kind of the kickoff to the community engagement process. We'll have the interactive tactile urbanism open house, and that's going to be combined with the OCP community engagement as well. So Joel and Karen from our planning department have been kind of working together on putting some of the details and scope of that engagement together. And then, of course, we'll have online survey, stakeholder workshop, and other community or engagement processes that we will gather information from, try and educate the residents of Cumberland on different ideas that the consultant has, and then we'll circle back on reaching out to the stakeholders again to make sure we heard correctly through the first part of the process. And that will help inform, of course, the list on page 2. So we've got like complete streets, opportunities and development. So we'll talk about what complete streets looks like. Opportune locations, like 4th Street, for example, maybe connecting onto Cumberland out to Bevan. That might be a great opportunity to look at bike paths, sidewalks, active transportation kind of connection piece. So there'll be some ideas thrown around. We'll listen to what the public has to say on what their thoughts are on locations for those complete streets. Then we'll work on road network classifications and the rest of the list. I know that I've got a note here following that list about the consultant committing to providing presentation for council and senior staff. So it's really a written presentation. Staff would be doing the presentations, just kind of keeping council updated as we work our way through the process until we get to the draft plan, at which time the consultant will actually be here physically to present kind of the work that we've put together, and then of course answer any questions council has or change things in the plan per council's wishes. So, but you'll be updated up to that point through the process. So, and then of course we've been throwing things like the consideration of 30K zones, and so I had a conversation with one of the consultants involved in the project here, and he said there's a number of things to consider. So you could, they could talk about policy requirements for a blanket 30K, but they want to also discuss 30K zones in other areas potentially. So I think we just need to kind of work our way through the process, hear what the community is concerned about when it comes to speeds, see what the consultant comes up for initial ideas on how we can address that, and then we can have that discussion with council. So,
Thank you. Any questions?
Just one, for things like the 30K, if it seems like, once we start into the consultation process, if it seems like these are home runs, like everybody's going, yes, these are things we want, is there any way that we're going to be able to move them to the front of the line and just kind of work on some ideas like that? I'm thinking of that one and the active, the Courtney connector that we heard more about earlier on this evening.
Right. So I don't know what the final format will look like in the report, but they'll have a table of recommendations, priorities, costs, kind of thing, and we can look at that. I'm not sure, like some of these recommendations might be more policy than they are actual project related. So we might have to break that out. I'm not sure what that's going to look like at this point, but definitely I think, if there's an opportunity, to implement something, we can look at that. We have to understand what the budget implication, of course, is as well. And there's other components to it, but yeah. I'll hopefully report back on what that's starting to shape out to look like once we have those details.
Any other questions? So I'm wondering, we did the active transportation survey. I don't know when we did that, but prior to now.
Yeah.
So wondering how that's is that just up to the consultant to work that into the feedback?
Yeah, they'll take the data and the information through that consultation process, and they'll feed it into kind of the active transportation piece that'll be built into this plan for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I know we've been collecting data, multimodal data in various places. So will council, when he comes with his first report, will we see like where he collected information? Will we get a breakdown of that data as well?
I'm not sure. They might have a summary type table in the draft report. I'm not sure we're going to see that right away, but it's something we can try and get our hands on and share with council at some point. Yeah.
Yeah, I think what I'm concerned about is that we get to a certain place and he's got a draft strategy for us, and then we're like, wait, we need information about this thing that nobody thought of, or I don't know, or that the community's raised. Now suddenly there's a concern about the street that was not on our radar.
I will say, like, the volumes are pretty low. Like the data I saw for the different points where they collected the multimodal data, the data's pretty low.
Yeah.
But we might hear from, like you say, the community, and they might have to circle back and look at other data. I'm just not sure at this point what that looks like.
Okay, but we would have an opportunity to do that if we needed to.
It's not within the existing scope, so we might have to look for extra budget, right? So there was a certain portion of the scope for data collection, and we identified kind of key. The consultant, this is what they live and breathe, right? So they identified kind of key locations within the community they thought was important to look at as part of this TMP. So.
Okay, and given the conversation earlier in the day and the conversation that's coming up about totems, is the roundabout included in this scope somehow? Like, can we look at that?
I think it will be. Like, if you look at the old roads, or streets master plan, I think it was the old roads master plan from 2007, it talked about a couple different options for that particular intersection. Okay. One of the options was exercised in 2011 when Coal Valley did the improvements that we see now. So there may be discussion on, I think the traffic circle will be included as part of the TMP, but there's other discussions on, our mini roundabouts like you see in Courtney, West Courtney, they're just, I guess, north of downtown Fifth Street. Is that appropriate for the community? Is there room? So I think we're going to look at different opportunities like that, but they all come with a cost too, right? So we got to make this. The thing is, we got to make it functional, be able to implement a plan, and not too high in the sky kind of thing.
I understand though that the roundabout is being paid for by the developer, the Coal Valley Estates developer, and I just want to make sure that we, as we go through this process, identify what that roundabout looks like, so that we can then give that plan to the developer and say, this is the roundabout we'd like.
So I don't think you're going to get the details on what the plan looks like. I think what you'll get, because that's really up to staff to decide
How to
what the
implement.
appropriate size of the roundabout looks like. You know, work with technical experts on approaches. You know, work with BC Transit on whether it works for the future electric buses, stuff like that. What you will see is a plan that identifies potential locations for other roundabouts or traffic circles as well. You know, Union Road, for example, at Royston or Cumberland Road, it might be
Egremont,
a future
yeah.
example of where you see a roundabout. So,
Yeah.
like you see in other communities around the province.
Okay, anything else?
Thanks, Rob.
All right,
You're welcome.
we have a recommendation there.
I'd like to make the motion that the council receive the Transportation Master Plan update for information.
Thank you, seconder. Thank you, Counselor. All in favor? And you're back with Waste Management Center.
Yes. So this is again is just a quick report to update council and ask for some recommendations on how to proceed. There's two issues here. We've been in discussion with the Comox Valley Regional District for a while on water connection, which is required under the current water regulation bylaw. So we have the water main that was extended out to service the 6-lot Aciano development, which passes by the landfill site. The bylaw currently states they have to connect. So we've been in discussion with them about that, and we've also had some discussions around development cost charges and how the new DCC bylaw would apply. So on the first item with water connection, staff is really recommending that we allow the Comox Valley Regional District, per the letter as the attachment in the report, more time to assess that. They have existing groundwater wells on site right now that service their operation and their facilities on that site. So they're not certain whether they require water from the village or whether what they have on site is adequate. Of course, they've operated there kind of remotely for a number of years and developed the site because of that. So there's that request from council to permit them an additional year to do their analysis, look at future expansion, whether they have adequate on-site water now. And then secondly, staff need more time to look at the development cost charge bylaw and how it might apply to that site. Could have a huge financial implication, you know, based on the terminology in the bylaw of land utilized. So we've had some discussions with our planning lawyer on how that might apply or what we can do to provide some reasonableness, right? So really, staff need to spend some time, prepare a report. We'll come back to council, kind of maybe in a committee meeting of the whole or something, have a discussion on how we think we should proceed. But
Still a question about that. Given the fact that they do have 4 existing wells and that, is there an opportunity for them to, and maybe this is opening a can of worms, to still pay DCCs but bypass the need to hook up at the moment with maybe an additional cost in the future should they see it?
you know, that's a really good question, and I think I'd have to defer that to a lawyer because
Okay.
but
I know
but
it was
they're
an opening can of worms.
well, you're opening a can of worms. There may be provincial legislation that applies that
Okay.
we'd have to look at. So yeah, I don't have an answer for you.
Is that Jesse trying to talk?
Is that me?
No,
I think
it
it's
might be the
Come in, Councillor Pepper.
internet.
I won't touch the podium.
Anything else?
Yeah, I'm just wondering, if why are we giving them one additional year in what's going to happen in 1 year if they say that, no, we've got enough water, we're not going to connect? We still don't want to connect, are we then?
Well, there are, so our bylaw is interesting because if you do a bit of research, there are other bylaws around the province that actually permit exemptions. They're kind of a unique site, right? So they're not really commercial, they're not institutional, and they're not really industrial. They're a special service type site. They're not residential. So, you know, they've been independent. They haven't had the ability to connect to services, and frankly, you know, as an operations manager, I don't know if I want to send water in there just because of the leachate and all the nature of business they're in, right? So, I think it's really to give them an additional year to say, hey, yeah, we've got enough water on site, or no, actually, we'd like to consider connecting. I mean,
Councillor Kettler?
Sorry, thanks. So there was the consideration of fire service water as well, and then the other thing I guess to think about is at some point we'll probably want sewer out there too, and so the waste management site has on-site sewer treatment for the leachate. But I think if you're speaking about developing a policy for them specifically in regard to DCCs, that both water and sewer should be considered.
well, regarding sewer, I don't know that they would ever connect to sewer. I mean, they have a leachate treatment facility now that deals with, you know, waste contaminated type effluent water, right? So, and as far as their operations, they probably have adequate septic to handle that, and it's uphill, so it would be quite costly. As far as the water, the fire supply, I mean, I guess it's really a discussion, you know, we need to have with the fire department on, you know, what their fire response looks like, and whether providing hydrants, you know, on Bevan Road are adequate, or whether, you know, those should be extended on site. And of course, extending on site is costly too, right? So it comes at the expense of the ratepayers or tipping fee payers or taxpayers. So,
Which is us in the end. Michelle?
Well, I think this 1 year will not only buy the CVRD time, it'll buy us time, because I think our bylaw needs to be reviewed. It may not take into account some situations that says everyone must connect, and in fact, if the sewer line goes by there, they'll have to connect. So, as per that bylaw, so I think it's good timing. So that's what could happen in that year is they may say, well, we don't think we need to connect, but we've done our homework, and we go, yeah, no, but we think that you do, and this is the reason. You know, we could come back, or they could say we want to connect, and we've done our homework, and we say, you know, maybe it's not the best use for this water, or something like that. So I think it's both sides, and we're not 100% sure what's going to come out of it at the end of it all, because of the unknowns. But I do think that the bylaw does need to be reviewed, because it doesn't allow for unusual circumstances, and the landfill actually could be one of those ones.
Yeah. Okay. There's a recommendation there?
I can go. I'd like to recommend that council allow the Comox Strathcona Waste Management Centre an additional year to connect to village water beyond the 1 year requirement contained in the Municipal Water Systems Regulation and Fees Bylaw 1023 to allow a review of water servicing requirements. And further, that council instructs staff to review the newly adopted DCC bylaw and how it may be applied to Comox Strathcona Waste Management Centre site, and to bring back a report for discussion at a future date.
Seconder? Thank you. All in favor? Excellent.
you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rob. Council Code of Responsible Conduct.
I can just speak to this briefly. So I think all council members know that the community charter requires councils to decide whether or not to review its existing code of conduct, which Cumberland has, within 6 months following the general election. Before making this decision, council must consider the principles of integrity, accountability, respect, and leadership and collaboration. The model code of conduct, which Cumberland's code is based on, was updated in 2019 by the Working Group on Responsible Conduct, which was the joint initiative between UBCM, Local Government Management Association, and the Ministry of Municipal Affairs. If council does decide to update its code, staff is recommending that some resources be allocated for that process to make sure it's a process that council is happy with. And happy to have council's feedback, and there is a recommendation to update the code and allocate those resources there.
Thank you. Any questions?
No real questions, just noticing that the main differences in between our code and the model code are repercussions, I guess, is for want of a better word, where the model code actually says if you breach any of the standards, then this is what happens, which is what's missing from our code currently. So that would be what we would be adding, I assume, if we decide to move forward with updating our code.
Yeah, I mean, we could, or we could have a discussion about it. Yeah, but I think it's useful for us to go through as a learning opportunity as well, and figure out where we are with ours and how we want to update it and have that conversation. So,
Sorry.
Councillor
I was just
Barkey?
wondering if there was any indication of costs for this?
Staff haven't looked into cost for the process of developing a code of conduct,
Yeah.
or
Just for a review of it.
haven't looked into it, but I could say maybe $2,000 to $3,000. We'd have to get a quote from a
Okay.
consultant and bring it back at budget time for council to discuss then.
Thank you.
Councillor Kettler?
Thanks. Yeah, I just wanted to say that a lot of local governments are sort of beefing up their codes of conduct with a repercussions section. And I think, it's not a problem until it's a problem. And then you do need to be able to have some repercussions for contravention of the code. So I think it's good if we do that, and it doesn't sound like it would be a enormous cost or anything.
Agreed.
Okay, I'll move the council out of this. Oh, no, wrong one. Oh, did we read the last recommendation?
We did.
That council consider the principles of responsible conduct and decide to update its code of conduct and consider resourcing the review during its 2024 budget development.
Seconder?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor? And carried. Quaxidas, welcome polls. Hello, Kevin.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So yeah, this past winter, Council received a delegation from the Dawn to Dawn, Action on Homelessness, and Carver Everson, the carver of the two poles that are currently stored at the community school, about a potential opportunity to temporarily raise them in the village until they get installed at their permanent home at the Guaxidas housing site. And since that time, I've worked with Grant and Carver a little bit to try and sort out some of the specifics around that request, so council can determine how you would like to move forward. So basically, it comes down to location, cost, and timeline. So working with Carver, who is the main carver of the poles, his preferred location really is the Peace Park site. Given that they're welcome poles, the prominence of that location is really appealing. And they were made aware of the potential challenge of that site with a future roundabout, but that remains relatively uncertain as to timelines and exact design, as does the final location for raising these poles of the housing site. So In terms of costs, we reached out to one contractor who's done some comparable work, installed a Guardian pole at Courtney Air Park, and are recommending if council would like to proceed, we'd want to work with about a $40,000 budget. And then timelines, it's dawn to dawn, and Carver's wish to see this happen soon. They have some storage challenges. They are really targeting a June installation. That's quite quick. So in addition to laying out the option of what our typical process would be, there is an alternative for council to consider. So our typical process with something like this is we would proceed to get a design done for the basis. We would go out to tender. We would get competitive quotes, and then we would work through a construction administration contract. And that's just simply not possible in the next few weeks. And that's where the alternative option of granting dawn to dawn comes forward with a few variations on that for council to consider to work within, yes, a more expedited timeline.
Thank you. And thanks for the option as well. Go ahead, Councillor Brecky.
Thank you, Kevin. I'm very much in favor of getting this up as fast as possible if we can get it in time. I don't know if it's possible to get it for the 125th celebrations or if that's just too tight.
I wouldn't promise it.
No, okay, you wouldn't promise. But I think just given the excitement in the community and the storage challenges and just overall how much interest that's generated, to get that up as fast as possible would really, I don't know, it would pull that project together and show respect for Carver and all the work that he's done on it as well. So and dawn to dawn.
Anyone else?
Yeah, thanks, Kevin. The only comment that I would really have is just hopefully it might be a bit further away from where the roundabout might be, so that it just stays there forever. But that's just my loose comment. I don't know, just definitely the roundabout's coming. So
yeah, that's certainly an added complication. I don't think we could cite them to work within a future roundabout without having done that detailed design work. So I think it would be to cite it based on the existing landscape now and best place it, and then in the future when several details would have to be resolved in terms of what are the permanent poles at that location and what might be the messaging around them and what might the Carver's interest be, like those types of things would then be considered, and perhaps cited within a new roundabout might be something different. But yeah,
I feel like I just
trying
to
to
state the obvious on that one.
Yeah,
The
no, this has been a
geographic
challenging
center.
one. There's a lot of balls to be juggled on this one. We're just trying to, simplify what are the options right now, and this is the best we could come up with.
I'm also in support of getting it up right away. So.
Yeah, no, we thought about that. Maybe we could put them and they'll just design the roundabout around the
so
Yeah.
good.
poles,
That would be
but
good.
I'm not sure. Traffic engineers probably don't work
Super
that way,
likely.
yeah. No.
God, that would be
There's a few other details to look at, like Rob was sharing some of his knowledge just of the subsurface conditions, so we'll have to look at some of those technical things as well. But yeah.
Councillor Therrien.
I was under the impression when Grant Schilling was here that that they were going to be searching for the grant money to fund the second set of poles.
Yeah, what Grant and I have
Or
discussed
is this a joint effort, or is it?
Yeah, I mean, their organizational mandate isn't necessarily to apply for polls on public grounds in the future. Grant has some connections and has obviously been successful. I think it's the BC Arts Council. So when we met, we talked about, well, it makes sense for us to work together towards exploring this, but the recommendation here would be to get the mandate from council to figure out how we could have these things permanently, and if Dawn to Dawn was in support of that, all the better.
Okay, I'm also in favor of the alternative to get Dawn to Dawn to expedite this if they can, and to use the roundabout and yeah, hope the timing of that and the new build and moving them and all that just works out as it should. So there's a recommendation there. If we want Dawn to Dawn to do it, that alternative recommendation is on page 221 of 246. Sounds like that's the direction we're going. Councillor Kettler, did you want to say anything? Yes.
Yeah, thanks. I think it is quite a significant cost to put them up, and so it is a shame to put them somewhere where they're going to need to be taken down. I don't know if there was any consideration of like putting them at the grassy front of our fire hall or something like that.
Yeah, we did discuss a number of other sites. Basically, the criteria were public lands and high exposure. And the concern with that site, if I remember or recall correctly, was it would compete with other things. There's a sign where, sometimes recruiting there. There's some other traffic signs. And the idea was to try and site them in a spot where they really would be the feature attraction or given the attention they deserve. So, it was a tough one to think of in a better location than Peace Park, and that's why I think Carver has made that his preferred location. Yeah.
Go ahead.
So just to that question, is there you might not know this, but hopefully there would be a way that maybe we could reuse some of the installation. I obviously that's well ahead of what we're up to, but is that possible to move the base of those poles kind of thing?
Yeah, and reinstall them in the, yeah.
Yeah, I think that I would doubt it because I think it's like a formed in place. Perhaps some of the hardware or design work, like there might be some opportunities to save some money. I think when the roundabout project goes through, there's going to be a major civil construction project happening on site with concrete being poured and various formwork, so there would be no mobilization costs, and I don't think this number would be the same in the future, but I don't know what those savings would be.
And presumably that number is going to be paid for by the developer.
That agreement hasn't been negotiated, but I think that project's probably in the, if I had to guess, several hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not more. And so hopefully this is a small component of,
All right. Do you need a recommendation?
Yes, please.
So we got to do all three and then the alternative as well.
No, you would want to just do the alternative and
Should
the,
council wish to proceed with this alternative option, staff would
Yeah.
also require council resolutions 1, 2, and potentially 3 as well. Is that correct here? So the whole thing?
sorry, it's a lot of words.
Yeah, no, it's all right. I do the auctioneer thing.
That is the recommendation.
Okay.
It's to confirm the location, funding source, and then if you'd like us to
Oh, it
pursue
is.
the
Okay.
future,
Alright.
and then that alternative option, which would
On
be
top.
at council's discretion to
Alright.
expedite them. Yeah.
Here we go. I move that council approve the temporary installation of the 2 Guaxidas welcome poles in Peace Park, and that council approve the expenditure of up to $40,000 to be funded through the general asset reserve for the installation of the welcome poles, and that council direct staff to bring forward an amendment to the adopted 2023 to 2027 financial plan bylaw to reflect this expenditure. And furthermore, that council directs staff to research potential grant programs for funding for the carving and raising of permanent welcome poles at the Peace Park location. And furthermore, that council directs staff to conditionally grant up to $40,000 to Don to Don Action on Homeless Society for the sole purpose of raising 2 welcome poles and related costs at Peace Park, and that council directs staff to enter into a waiver agreement with Don to Don Action on Homeless Society and their construction contractor, acknowledging that the village has approved the construction of the pole footings without structural engineering sign-off on the condition that the contractor demonstrate the necessary knowledge, a recent experience on a similar project, and provide a reference satisfactory to the village from a similar recent project.
Thank you. Second.
Seconded.
Thank you. All in favor? Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin.
Excellent. Okay, Mike, you're up. Grant applications for Emergency Operations Centers and Training 2023.
Good evening, Mayor and Councilor. This is no cost, this one.
Thank you.
This is an
That's
easy
so
one.
rare for
This
you.
is easy.
It's so
no
nice.
cost.
I wish everyone started that way.
So, this is 2 grant applications to work with CVRD emergency program to apply for a grant to finish off we rescinded our grant. I was here last time to put in for a grant application. We rescinded that grant and went together with the regional district for that exact same grant. Rather than be in competition with them, we felt we had better chance if we were joining them. So we rescinded that one grant and applied for the grant with them, or applying for the grant with them for this EOC plus a secondary grant, which will benefit the whole valley in looking at emergency routes, training, all in general, like emergency services, roadways, which roads we're going to use in emergency, what alternate roads we're going to use. It's going to be a whole emergency plan. So that's a $30,000 grant. The other grant's a $150,000 grant, which $30,000 of that grant will come to Cumberland Fire Hall, where we can do our antenna and do all the stuff to finish off our EOC. And so Carrie did a lot of work on this, and so did Annie and everybody else. So we think we have a good chance of being successful at both of these grants. And we just need your approval to move forward with them.
Excellent. Thank you. Questions?
Pretty straightforward. Free money's free money.
Okay, there's a recommendation there.
Oh, okay, I'll go.
I'm still dizzy from the last one.
Long night. Thanks. Okay, I'll move that the Village of Cumberland Council approves the application made to the Union of BC Municipalities Community Emergency Preparedness Fund for $30,000 to be used in 2023 to 2024 to support the regional application made by the Comox Valley Regional District, and that as a joint applicant, the Village of Cumberland Council agrees that the primary applicant will apply for, receive, and manage the UBCM CEPF EOC and training grant funding on the village's behalf. If successful in the grant funding, further move that the Village of Cumberland Council approves the application to be made to the Union of BC Municipalities Community Emergency Preparedness Fund for $30,000 to be used in 2023-24 to support the regional application made by the Comox Valley Regional District, and that as a joint applicant, the Village of Cumberland Council agrees that the primary applicant will apply for, receive, and manage the UBCM CEPF Public Notifications and Evacuation Route Planning Grant funding on the village's behalf if successful in grant funding.
Nice. Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Boom.
There
Thank
go.
you.
Go get the money. Thank
We
you.
all work together on this emergency planning anyway, so it'd be a great opportunity.
Yeah.
Makes
Yeah.
sense. Thanks.
Nicely done. Okay. United Riders of Cumberland paved pump track proposal.
We're getting there.
We are. Up fast.
Need a nap break.
I know.
Was that a nap break?
You guys could hear that? I thought I said that in my head. Sorry to interrupt.
We're very
Okay.
excited about this next thing you're going to tell us about, so go for it.
Relate to the other.
Well, yeah, this is following up on another recent allegations. This one from the United Riders of Cumberland, proposing a paved pump track down at Village Park. So this has been something that staff has long thought of, and it just wasn't a priority based on our resources. But I think with UROC championing it, there are certainly benefits to the village. Maintenance and performance being one, but probably more importantly is the accessibility. The current one is not catering to as wide a spectrum as certainly a paved pump track would. And given the demographics and potential usage, I was just down the park this afternoon and the rest of the park was quiet, but the skate park and jump park were just hopping, and so this would just be another attractant down there. So I think the recommendation is we would initiate discussions with UROC on a partnership agreement. Under what terms would this happen, and funding obviously being a big one, timelines, other things like that. And if council wanted to proceed, then yeah, we would present potential terms and go from there. So.
Okay, questions?
Just a comment that I'm pretty excited, and it just seems like the next step to beef up an asset like this that is obviously used by so many people. And just, yeah, watching, just been getting videos of pump tracks randomly. I don't know if my phone's been listening to meetings or whatever, but recently, but just with the different ability people and folks, it just seems really, well, the next step is to do this. So yeah, thanks.
Anyone else?
Yeah, just I noticed you didn't say that this one was free.
Kevin never says that.
It's so, I imagine that you're going to work with UROC and look for funding sources for this.
So
It's a $200,000 price tag is what I see in the report, and that's.
Yeah, the discussions I've had with UROC have been around managing expectations for a project like this and what, financial resources the village has and the limitations of those. So no numbers have been thrown around, but I think there's an expectation that we would be a minor funding partner at most, and they would be the major and seek out through, their nonprofit and status as a community organization, grants and conduct their own fundraising and whatnot. But those would be the details that we, and I think, through council's annual budgeting process, there may be opportunities to contribute, and there's probably some benefits to contributing in terms of helping own design and whatnot. But as I say, I think we would be a minor funding partner in any sort of partnership agreement.
And we would get an amazing asset.
Yes.
And they did mention that
manage.
$50,000 comes off of that 200 that they already got from somebody, I thought.
Yeah, they've already initiated some conversations, I think, with one of the local service clubs. I know they've initiated conversations with some potentially, material suppliers. There's a, paving manufacturer in the village. There's also a number of, I think, cyclists in the community that operate, earthworks companies and stuff like that. So I see it being somewhat similar to how that project, there's a lot of community donations to the original jump park and skate park project. So something similar is quite likely.
And if I understood correctly from the original report, this should reduce our ongoing maintenance costs?
Yeah, I think right now our ongoing budget is somewhat stretched, and that's partially because of the pump track. I wouldn't commit to necessarily saying it would come down, but I think it would result in a better maintenance service for the existing. Some of those details would have to be determined. And if it did come down, it would be relatively negligible in the grand scheme of things, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Better than going up.
Yep. Okay, there's a recommendation there.
I'd like to recommend that council direct staff to work with the United Riders of Cumberland on a project partnership agreement for the proposed paved pump track at Village Park and report back to council with the draft agreement.
Thank you. Seconder?
Second.
And all in favor? Thank you. Okay, and the next one is the accessibility plan. So we talked about this at Committee of the Whole last month. So if we are ready to move that forward, there's a recommendation there.
I'll move that council participate in the collaborative development of a regional accessibility framework, provided that socioeconomic and political inclusion and diversity are not excluded by the framework, and enter into an agreement with Comox Valley Social Planning Society for the services of a regional accessibility committee along with other regional local government partners.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor? Excellent. That's passed. And Cumberland Events Society Memorandum of Understanding. This was also from Committee of the Whole. We had the presentation from Marianne. And then we had a presentation from staff about clarifying this relationship. So, and it continues to clarify. So I think this will be an ongoing living agreement as we, like I'm even hearing new things about the event, the weekend. And so, yeah, we'll just incorporate those as we go, I guess.
Right.
It's a learning journey. So there's a recommendation there.
Can I move? I'd like to move that council enter into a memorandum of understanding with the Cumberland Events Society and authorize the mayor and chief administrative officer to execute the agreement, and that council authorize the manager of Parks and Recreation to make changes to the memorandum of understanding upon mutual agreement with the Cumberland Events Society, providing said changes are strictly operational in nature and do not change the village's financial commitment or level of service provision.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor? Thank you. Okay, reports. Congratulations to Councillor Therrien, who was the only one to actually manage to get his report in writing into the agenda package. We're all going to endeavor to do slightly better on that, myself included. So I'm first. So I think I'll just. We had a lot of stuff happening in April. It was very busy. One of them was the housing summit that I attended in Vancouver. It was very informative. I presented on the small communities panel along with Port Hardy and a northern community, maybe Prince George, which is not small but northern. And really great conversations there. Also attended a session on short-term rental regulation and bylaw enforcement around that, and lots of municipalities looking for support from the province to help with that, along with helping fund that through taxation on short-term rentals. So all good conversations around housing, and I did feel like there was clarity around small communities needing small community solutions, and so that was good. We also had our MP Gord Johns here to meet with us about our strategic priorities, and then we also had our MLA here to check in, and so we walked her around the community and met with some community partners, and she is looking to support them just like we do, so developing those relationships directly, I think, will be of good help to those nonprofits, and I think that's all I'll say, because it's 20 after 8. Who's next?
Next, I'll keep it brief as well. Other than my regular council duties, definitely enjoyed AVICC last month.
There was that.
I thought I'd mention it.
Was that too?
Yeah, lots of good stuff last month. AVICC, once again, networking with the island communities seems very valuable, and talking to our neighbors and such to learn what they're up to and find some maybe possible solutions to different things. It was a pretty quiet month at the boards. The Solid Waste Board is on the stage 2 of their engagement plan, which is to develop a robust SWMP process, which reflects a broad range of perspectives, and to raise awareness about the process and the future of waste management, and providing opportunities for input from the public and First Nations, and engaging stakeholders. That was it for the solid waste. The hospital board, there was a financial audit, which is fascinating. Totally joking. But some highlights include that the balance in the revenue fund is $2.2 million and can be used for general operations of the hospital district, and that the reserve fund balance is at $26.8 million and has been designated for the board priorities and initiatives, which mainly includes the new health hub that will be coming up. Also, the chair, vice chair meet with Island Health a couple times a year to advocate and to cooperate and inform and engage. This last one, they talked about the importance of the services, and in particular lab services. And they just reiterated Island Health's role as a 40% funding partner for the hub and for the Kamloops River Long-Term Care Center to be built, and just more advocation with Island Health. That's it.
Can I ask you a question about that advocacy for lab support?
There were no details.
There were no details. Okay, thank you.
That was yeah. No one, yeah. Sorry.
Okay. Are you next? Nope. Yes, you are.
I'm next. Okay. I got mine in on time because it's very small. I was away on vacation for most of April.
That's right.
When I did get back, I acted as parliamentarian for the election of the new board members at the Rock AGM. So I'm happy to report that 3 new members were added by acclamation, and it looks like they've got another great board going forward. I was also at the lunch with Josie Osborne. It was a pleasure to meet our MLA and get a chance to chat with her, and looking forward to more discussions with her about various topics. And I just want to use my platform to mention one that I put on my report the previous month, and encourage everybody to go and donate blood. The Red Cross is short 30,000 regular donors since COVID. So if you can, please take time to go in a couple times a year and donate.
Thank you. Councillor Brecky?
Mine will also be brief. In addition to regular duties, I attended the AVICC, which I found invaluable. Democracy in action. Fantastic. There was no Heritage Committee this month, and unfortunately, the last minute I had a work emergency, which prevented me from going for the Community Justice Center's meeting. However, now Karen McKinnon is officially the managing director there, and so Bruce has retired. So I did attend a small retirement party for him at the Courtney Museum, and it was very well attended by the glittereri of the valley. What was the last thing? Oh yes, I'd like to give a shout out to Catherine Worthy, who provided $300 for the upcoming Soapbox Derby, which will be 10 o'clock on, starting at 10 o'clock on 2nd Street, just at...
On Saturday?
It's the Saturday.
Saturday.
Yeah, it's the Saturday. So there'll be hot dogs. There will be 3 categories of racers. There will be a 12 and under, 12 to 8, or 12... Actually, let's go 11 and under, 12 to 18, and then an adult component. And we're going to be having next week a little construction bee if anyone wants to help out fixing the ramps. That's about it. Thank you.
This is the first time for the adults?
Yeah, this is the first time for the adults.
Very exciting.
So bring your helmets. Hockey gear, could be helmets.
Oh my goodness.
Whatever.
Yep, okay. Councillor Kettler?
We did talk about liability insurance, right?
Yep.
Oh yeah.
It's not on us.
Sure.
It's
Oh,
not our
and
event.
Crestline is actually taking care of all the hay bales and the traffic permits and everything like that. So thank you out there,
And the
Crestline.
waivers.
And the waivers. That's right. And Troy apparently, with his math brain, is going to be doing the what do you call it? The splits.
The brackets.
The brackets. Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, so it was great to meet with both our MP and our MLA this month. And as was mentioned, we did the Association of Vancouver Island Coastal Communities Convention. Both our resolutions passed unanimously, so that's great. At the regional district, we had a greenhouse gas inventory come back from a consultant, and it was pretty interesting. I forwarded it to all of you.
Uh-oh.
I lost her. If you can hear us, we lost you. No. Oh.
Come back, Jesse. Yeah, we need that music again.
Do you want? Well, we could do. Do you want to do the property tax rates bylaw while we wait?
Oh, don't we have to wait for her though?
Can we go? Well, she can come. She can do a report when we after this.
Oh no, wouldn't she have to vote on it though?
I don't think she's going to vote again.
I don't think she's going to vote
I'm just
against the
gonna go
tax
on
rate.
a limb.
We've got a
Yeah.
quorum. We still have quorum.
What's that?
We still have quorum.
I think she supports it also.
Okay.
Okay.
Let's do it.
Okay. So let's do. Annie, are you still here? Okay. Let's do the. You don't need to present it, do you? No. So there's a recommendation there on the 2023 property tax rates bylaw.
Okay, I'd like to move that council give a final adoption of the 2023 tax rates bylaw number 1192/2023.
Second.
All in favor? Excellent. Should we do the housing agreement too? That might take a few more minutes. Here comes Karen.
I bet she's supportive too.
Right. There she is.
Did you want to do that now?
Sure,
Yeah.
we may as well.
It is 8:30.
We have to make a motion to extend it, or is that at 9?
We do, at 9.
I think
Okay.
I think we'll be there by 9.
Finally, the housing agreement for our
Yeah.
affordable housing project. Yay.
Hooray! Yeah, I really wanted to be at the end, but okay.
So we could all clap.
We can still clap.
We can still clap.
Yeah. All right. Well, this report brings forward the housing agreement for the 3345 Second Street Affordable Housing Project. That's just behind the Cumberland Lodge for those councillors who might not have been here when this project started. We have two bylaws in progress. One is an official community plan amendment bylaw, and one is a zoning amendment bylaw to rezone that property to allow for a 22-unit affordable housing development. And those are all both at third reading, and the applicant had to fulfill some conditions before the bylaws can come back for fourth reading and adoption, and the housing agreement and covenant was one of them. And the housing agreement required sign-off and discussion between all the parties that are party to the agreement, which includes the Comox Valley Transition Society, Island Health, and the society, and ourselves, sorry. So a bylaw is necessary under the Local Government Act for housing agreement, has to be passed by bylaw before the covenant, the associated covenant, can be registered on title. So this is one of the last few steps in finalizing the rezoning of the property. It's one of the conditions, and then once all the documents have been registered, we'll come back with the bylaw to complete the rezoning for the applicant. Yeah, so essentially the purpose of the housing agreement is because we are doing rezoning the property for the purpose of affordable housing. It's to make sure that the property is used for that purpose. Obviously, we want this applicant to succeed, but was it to fall through for whatever reason, the property would still be designated for affordable housing, so it couldn't be used for just a multifamily development. That's the purpose essentially of the agreement. So the agreement lays out what affordable housing means in the context of that property, and those definitions were arrived at in consultation with the applicants, who consulted with their potential funders to make sure it meets funding criteria for both the Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation and BC Housing. And it does that. And finalizing the housing agreement, yeah, like I said, it's one of the conditions of rezoning, gets us one step closer, and we've learned that another funding call from BC Housing may be fairly close, so we're hoping to wrap all this up fairly shortly, and with your support, and come back also with the rezoning.
Excellent. Questions? There's a recommendation there.
Sorry, just one quick
Oh.
question. Is it's all in the zoning, it's not a covenant on the land, it's strictly within, there is a covenant.
Yeah, so the housing agreement and covenant are in one document in this case. They could be separate, actually, as we learned from a lawyer, but it's often also done this way.
Okay.
And yes, it gets registered on title of the property.
Excellent. Thank you.
All right, I'll move the council give first, second, and third reading to housing agreement 3345 Second Street, bylaw 1193, 2023.
Second.
That was like synchronized. All in favor? Thank you. Thank you so much for your work on that.
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
Yay!
Hey, that's an awesome one.
Is she back?
Yes, Councillor Kettler's back.
Sorry, Councillor Kettler, we lost you, but you're back to round us off.
Yeah, not too much more to say. The greenhouse gas inventory, which you guys received via email, and it outlines a bunch of data gaps, like from industry and and ICBC. Oddly enough, there isn't a lot of information on vehicles, or not good information. So there was a request to try and get some better information, and then all of that is going to be folded into a greenhouse gas reduction strategy. That's all. Thanks.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay. Okay. Thanks, Jesse. Okay, notices, motions, and announcements. Accessibility and Inclusion Select Committee is Monday, May 15th, 2023 in Council Chambers. Advisory Planning Commission is Thursday, May 11th in Council Chambers. We don't have the times. I think Advisory Planning is at 4.
Yes.
I don't want to say that because I don't know, but they'll be on the website. 4 o'clock? Tree protection, community engagement, online meetings on May 18th and 24th, and an online survey will be open from May 15th to June 2nd, which will also be on the website. Plan your community event on May 24th from noon till 7 p.m. on 3rd Street. Come on out and participate in all of those. Thank you.
Can I
Question
add one
period.
thing for that? For the, if you want to bring a soapbox down for that, I think Karen wanted some people to scatter them about and plan your street with that as well. So if anyone's out there that really wants to show theirs off.
Bring your go-kart.
I'm really plugging this.
Any questions?
There are questions tonight.
Yes, there will be. Cold Valley questions.
It's a bit of a mixed bag. The first is regarding Coal Valley development permit, and are there plans for a playground park or at the very least a green space for phase 10 on Upper Kendall?
To be sure. You try and answer it. I think that is to be determined, but Courtney can help us out with that answer.
I could say that all the parkland dedication has already been done for that phase.
And so that, can we just be clear, because we get this comment quite often, so that park dedication includes...
Which parks? Oh, so the Watercourse Linear Park, which is that's just what it's called in the agreement, but that's the ravine.
Yeah.
There's also the Camp Road Park that backs onto the backyards along Camp Road, and
Greenway.
there's Soulport, the Greenway, the Camp Road Greenway, that's what it's called, and Soulport Park.
It's not considered,
Nope.
it's not part of the park dedication, yeah.
That's correct. Yes. So that has already been done, but then the report that's on the agenda tonight describes the potential for a lot to be transferred, 2 lots to be transferred to the village, one of which could potentially yet to be determined host a neighborhood park, but future planning would have to be undertaken, and that's still a decision of council.
Thank you so much. Next.
Okay, next question. This is regarding the transportation master plan. When the plan is being sent to stakeholders for input, does that include residents of the village? And are benches included in the transportation master plan?
So there are I believe that there will be several opportunities for the public to engage with the master transportation plan. One is on May 24th. It is a public event, which I just announced. Plan your community event on May 24th from noon till 7 p.m. on 3rd Street. There's also a survey, I understand. And there was also the active travel survey that will feed into this, and also your regular input via council or anytime letters. And benches, yes. You can mention benches in your requests and in your, yeah, for sure. And I think they're in the active travel survey. Yeah.
Okay.
That's it.
The next question. This one is Coal Valley Estates question. The report states that this is within the 5% change. So this comprehensive development agreement is not It's not necessary to go to public hearing. Each time the development has been amended, it quotes being within the 5%. How many times can there be a 5% change?
Yes, please.
I think I could answer, I could say that the comprehensive development agreement does not specify that.
Right. So it could be 5% on every phase, for instance. Right? Because each phase comes to us in a package, so yeah. The CDA is maybe not clear on that point.
Okay, this question is about the exemption to the Waste Management Center. Why would the village give exemptions to the landfill? And it refers, if you keep giving exemptions, it speaks to people in the village who are on septic and well water. It's not quite clear. As the bylaw says, they must connect. How do they not get to connect?
So we didn't give them an exemption. We gave them time to have a closer look at their water requirements. And we also gave our own staff time to look at the bylaw and see whether it is appropriate for the specific use of a landfill. So we have not given them an exemption yet. And I don't know that we've given exemptions to anyone else in the past either. So. No. We need those dollars. Okay, thanks. Can we have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make the motion to adjourn.
Thank you.